Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. May I have your attention, please? Welcome to the regular August meeting of the Concord Zoning Board of Adjustment. We will follow our usual procedure this evening, which is to say we will take the cases in the order in which they appear in the agenda, and we will ask the appellant to come forward, be sworn in, and be seated in the chairs to my right and offer us any testimony that he or she would like us to hear. After the appellant steps down, we will solicit testimony from anyone in the audience who is in favor of the appeal and anyone in the audience who is in opposition to the appeal. We ask that appellants, if at all possible, confine their testimony to a 10-minute interval, and that members of the audience confine theirs to a 5-minute interval. Following the public testimony portion of the hearing, we'll check in with code enforcement to see if there are any comments from their office, and then if any testimony has been offered that appears to justify factual clarification, the appellant will have the opportunity to offer that clarification prior to our closing the public testimony portion of the hearing. Under most circumstances, the board will act on each case before proceeding to the next. We do have one exception in terms of procedure this evening, which is the first case on our agenda, 0076-2023, request for a rehearing on 151 Elm Street. We don't customarily necessarily take public testimony on a request for a rehearing. We usually rely on a written submission, which we do have in this case. And rather than the criteria for a special or exception or a variance applying, in this case, what we need to hear is that we have made either an error in law or new factual information that we did not have at the time of the original hearing that is relevant has been offered. With that, we'll take up case 0076-2023, request for rehearing, 151 Elm Street, RO Open Space Residential District. Jamie and Jacob Farwell owners. The owners wish to operate an automotive repair, service, and towing business and seek a variance to Article 28.2 for allowable principal and accessory uses in the zoning district to allow use J4, automotive repair, service, towing, excluding bodywork. This case was heard and the variance was denied in the July meeting. Has everyone had a chance to read the submission? Why don't I start at your end of the table, Nick? Did you see anything in the submission that suggested that we had made an error in law or procedure, or that there was new factual information that bore on the case?
A couple of things. In the appeal, I thought I noticed a reference to the fact that we had granted in an RO district a similar case, the wedding folks on Bog Road. So to me, that's new information that I guess we have a precedent of having done that in the past in the RO district in that area. And I think we had also a submission of, I didn't count, but certainly a lot of support letters from folks in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Jim, how do you look at it?
Yeah, I don't think I was here the night of the hearing, so I'll trust Nick's representation that there is new information about a similar project having been approved, so I would be willing, not having heard it the first time, I'd be willing to rehear it.
Andrew.
I also was not here, so I had reviewed the minutes and I read the submission. I mean, it's about, I don't know, 20 plus of the same letter just signed by different people. I'm not exactly sure what to make of that because it was all submitted after. I'm not sure why it couldn't have been submitted on the day of, but I don't have a reason to really disagree with Nick's view since he was here, so I won't stand in the way of rehearing if the others are inclined to support.
Brenda.
I'm inclined to support because I was the one yes vote for them anyway. There's no subcategory to what they were approving. I know why they did this chunk of letters. It's because their confusion of what the variance request looks like to what they actually want to do on the property do not coincide with each other. They're not cohesive. And so it looks like they went around and talked to all the neighbors, explained to them what they're actually looking to do on the property, and now the neighbors have come together in support.
Very good. In this case, I must differ from my colleagues. I didn't see anything in there that suggested to me an error in law or procedure, and the submission of additional comments from neighbors I didn't consider to be new information germane to the case, in as much as we don't essentially consider the neighbors' opinions as a plebiscite. We're just interested in the facts that they offer us. And as Andrew pointed out, this was a form letter, so there were no new facts in it after you read the first copy. And so from my point of view, I would not support a motion, but it sounds like I'm going to be all by myself in the middle here.
Can I make a point of information? Just to address what Nick said, just remember, you don't set precedent.
Thank you. Yep.
Just
I stand
clarification.
I stand corrected.
Very good. That's for the Supreme Court when they feel like it.
Hey, you know?
Yeah. So, would anyone care to make a motion?
I guess I'll start off by moving to reconsider the application,
To grant a rehearing.
to grant a rehearing.
Is there a second?
I'll make the second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. The vote is 4-1 with the chair in the minority. The case will be reheard. We'll start from scratch. Which brings us to our second case. This is our public hearing for 0072 2023 5 Pine Street, RN, Neighborhood Residential District. Concord White Properties 6 LLC is the owner. The owner wishes to construct a two-family dwelling on an existing lot where there is an existing multifamily dwelling, and seeks the following variances: to Article 2824H, allowable principal and accessory uses in zoning districts, to allow multiple principal uses on the same lot where the existing multifamily use is not permitted by right. Article 2852, duplex or two-family dwelling, to allow construction of a duplex on a lot with approximately 59 feet of frontage where 120 feet is required. And 3, Article 2852, duplex or two-family dwelling, to allow construction of a duplex on a lot of approximately 11,400 square feet where 15,000 square feet is required. Mr. Arnold, are you up for this one tonight?
I am.
Would you do me a favor as you sign in, or as you swear in, also sign in on that log?
Good evening.
Swear to tell the truth and nothing but?
I do.
Would you identify yourself for the record, please?
John Arnold from Warren Reno. I represent the applicant. So the applicant here is Concord White Properties LLC. The owner is Dan White. Unfortunately, he unexpectedly had to be out of town, out of the state this evening, so he couldn't be here. But Dan has about half a dozen residential properties in Concord, and he has a lot of experience doing residential conversions, the most recent being 37 Clinton Street, and has a lot of nice upscale type apartment and conversions in the city. This is the existing conditions plan, Tracy, right? Yeah, it is.
Yep.
So, if you can just scroll up, that'd be great. So to get oriented, this is Pine Street, right here on the right. Pleasant Street you can't see on the plan unless we scroll down, but it's along the bottom right here. The property at issue, 5 Pine Street, is what I'm outlining. It's this little rectangle up at the top of the plan. There's an existing driveway right here off of Pine Street. This existing building right here is a 3-unit multifamily building. There's an existing garage located right here. The property's in the RN district, but the district boundary is the property boundary right here. So the properties down on this side are in the institutional district, IS. If we can flip to the site plan, the proposed plan. Thank you. So the proposal here is to to demolish the garage that you saw on the existing site plan, which was right about here, and to build a new building back here. It's about the same size, but it would have 2 apartments in it, a duplex. And it would be tucked a little bit further back into the property. The garage was up here a little bit more, and the garage was right on this property line. This structure would comply with all those setbacks. As part of the development, this driveway that was off of Pine Street was right here. That's being eliminated and closed off. Parking lot's being reconfigured slightly, but the main difference is this interconnection with 104 Pleasant Street. So the main access, the only access, would be through 104 Pleasant Street out on this shared driveway right here. Just gonna have Tracy flip to a rendering, but I'll let her come back and do that. I'll keep going in the meantime.
I just asked, what is
Yeah.
104 Pleasant Street?
104 Pleasant Street, it has an existing building on it that's office space on the bottom and residential units on the top. So there's 3 units in the main, 3 residential units in the top of the main building with office space below. And there was a second building. If you can just pop back for 1 second, Tracy.
Can you just try to speak into the mic a little more, John?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Rose is having a little trouble trying to hear.
Yeah, no problem. So if you scroll down just a touch, just so we can see 104 Pleasant, great. So this is the existing building that has the residential units and the office. This is right now it's a carriage house. It's like a garage that's on the property. And as part of this development, this property is owned by Dan White as well, and so this project is really a redevelopment cohesively of both. And this garage right here is also going to be converted to a duplex. Now if you can pop to the rendering, that'd be great. So this is a rendering. This shows the duplex. It's labeled for 104 Pleasant Street. That's what it's been drawn for. But the duplex is being proposed on 5 Pine Street here is going to look a lot like this. So nice, attractive building about the same size as the garage that's coming down. So 3 variances we're asking for tonight. The first is to allow multiple principal uses on the same lot, being a duplex and multifamily, where the existing multifamily is not allowed by right. Second is to allow a duplex with 59 feet of frontage where 120 feet is required. And the third is to allow a duplex on a lot with 11,400 square feet where 15,000 feet is required. On the multiple principal uses, the ordinance allows multiple principal uses on the same lot if both uses are allowed. And in this case, we have an existing multifamily use on the property, and that use is grandfathered. It's not a use that's allowed by right. The city has drawn that distinction and determined that because the multifamily use is a grandfathered use as opposed to being permitted by right, that we cannot have multiple principal uses on the same property, even though the duplex that we're proposing is allowed by right in the district. But I want to be clear, we're not talking about changing anything with the existing multifamily structure. That's remaining as it is. It's entitled to continue as a grandfathered use. And all we're talking about is adding a duplex, which, as I said, standing alone is a use that's allowed by right in this zoning district. So basically, we're looking to add an additional use to the property that's an allowed use, but there's already an existing non-conforming use on the property. In terms of the public interest and spirit of the ordinance, there won't be any threat to the public safety, health, or welfare. As I said, there's 2 uses that we're talking about here. The existing multifamily use is a legal, pre-existing, non-conforming use, and the proposed duplex use is allowed by right. So both uses are lawful for different reasons, and having them both on the same lot won't create any new hazards in terms of public safety, health, or welfare. As for the character of the neighborhood, it won't have any impact. The duplex will be about the same size as the garage that's being removed, and it'll be tucked further back into the property, as I mentioned, to eliminate an encroachment into the side yard setback. The garage right now is non-conforming because it is in the side yard setback, and that'll be removed in the new setbacks. As for the duplex and the multifamily uses, I'd note that there are several multifamily uses and duplexers scattered throughout this neighborhood already. There's 4 others just on the same block in the RN district, and if you include the properties that are in the IS district, which are the ones along Pleasant Street, but also on the same block, there are a total of 6 that have duplexes or multifamily uses on them, so it won't be inconsistent with the neighborhood. And the adjacent property, as I was just mentioning, is owned by Mr. White, and that has essentially 3 different principal uses on it. It has the multifamily residential upstairs in the building, as the office uses downstairs in the building, and there's going to be a duplex in the carriage house, as I mentioned. On the substantial justice, the balancing test, there's really no harm to the general public here. Adding a second principal use to the property won't have any meaningful impact on anyone, especially since the access is going to be through 104 Pleasant Street, and the duplex is going to be tucked in the back of the property. I think there's actually a public benefit here because it seems like all we hear about is the housing shortage, and this project is going to add 2 quality housing units on 5 Pine Street, and as I mentioned, there's going to be another 2 on 104 Pleasant. On the property values, there won't be an adverse effect. The existing garage structure is being torn down, and a new residential structure of similar size is going to replace it. You saw the renderings. The building is going to be quite attractive. On the hardship, the property is unique in a few respects, probably most notably that it's a very narrow and deep lot. It's only 60 feet wide. It has an existing non-conforming use on it, the multifamily use in the existing building, and it's immediately adjacent to the IS zoning district. So the adjacent property, as I mentioned, 104 Pleasant Street is in the IS district, and in that district, both multifamily and duplex uses are allowed by right. So that, coupled with the fact that this property is so narrow at only 60 feet, if the development were shifted 45 feet to the south, or if the duplex building were shifted 45 feet to the south, there wouldn't be any issue. It would be allowed by right. And quite frankly, I don't think that difference of 45 feet, even though it puts you in a different zoning district, has any material impact on either the character of the neighborhood or serving the public purpose of the of the ordinance. And that's the other unique thing here is that the property 5 Pine is going to be tied in and developed cohesively with 104 Pleasant Street. And so even though you have multiple principal uses here, the property or the properties are really going to operate pretty cohesively. They've got some shared parking, they've got shared access, and so it really minimizes things that you typically have associated with multiple principal uses, things like multiple access points or different business operations, things like that. Operationally, you're not really going to be able to tell that there are multiple different uses or multiple principal uses on this property. Also, in evaluating the hardship criteria, you have to, sounds like that may have just gone out, you have to look at the general public purpose of the restriction. In this case, the restriction prohibits multiple principal uses on the same lot where an existing use is not permitted by right. And quite frankly, I don't think that the interpretation of that provision, the city's interpretation of it, demonstrates that there's any general public purpose to the provision. As I said, the multifamily use is there and it's protected as a grandfathered use. So what purpose can it possibly serve to say that you can't add a second use when that other use is already permitted by right? The additional use doesn't make the nonconformity any more nonconforming. The multifamily is there and it's entitled to remain. But if you prohibit an additional use that is a permitted use, it punishes the owner for having a use that they're entitled to continue. So I'd argue that prohibiting the additional use, which is a use that's permitted by right, on the basis that the existing use is non-conforming, doesn't have any substantial relationship to any general public purpose of the ordinance, and therein lies the hardship. On the lot size and frontage requests, I just want to add a couple of points. If we take the grandfathered multifamily use out of the equation for a moment, the duplex is an allowed use of the property, but the lot is a very old lot. The dimensions of the lot are insufficient for the requirements of a duplex. There's not enough frontage, there's not enough lot area for a duplex. So, in other words, a variance from the frontage requirement and the lot size requirement are both required for the allowed use to be permissible on the property in the first place. The other thing is that even though the lot size and the frontage are deficient here, the property is being developed cohesively with 104 Pleasant Street. And so with shared access and shared parking, Five Pine is getting the benefit of some additional land area and frontage that it's going to have the right to use as part of the development that offsets any perceived deficiency in the frontage and the lot size standing alone. And then finally, I just note on the lot size that the deficiency is really quite small. We're only talking about 3,500 square feet short of the required lot area, so it's not a dramatic difference. And I think that's it, although I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
I'll start with a question for Tracy. What is it that makes the existing building non-conforming?
The multifamily isn't allowed in the district.
Well, so,
It's because it has more than 2 units?
Yes,
so duplexes are allowed, but nothing more than 2.
correct.
How many units are in it?
3.
3. Questions from the board?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, I guess this is sort of an extension of Chris's question, I think. Could you, let's say the parcel was completely vacant. Could you build 2 duplexes? Because you're saying a duplex is allowed by right.
A
and
duplex,
multiple uses of the same type that are allowed or could be exercised.
right, so a duplex is an allowed use by right. If you do more than 2 duplexes on a property, I think you can do it, but I think the ordinance has a separate provision that deals with, what are they called?
UDs?
Yes,
What was it?
Land unit developments, PUDs.
Yeah.
the planned unit
You'd have to
development.
do
So there's specific requirements for how you do them, but you can, and I don't know the details off the top of my head, apologies.
Other questions? Brenda?
I was just curious on doing that, you'd have to probably put a deeded right-of-way
Yes.
between the two, because now your access is through that other parking
And
lot.
that'll come at the planning board level.
Yeah.
When they do the shared parking arrangement.
Another question for Dr. Hutton. In the event that, let's say they were to combine 2 of the units in the existing building into a single unit, thus making it a 2-unit, would they need a variance to build the other building?
No.
Not,
Well, the dimensional variance is not the use part.
got it, okay. Other questions?
Where's the frontage on the property?
On Five Pine?
59 feet.
It's 59 feet right along here.
But the driveway access is through Pleasant.
The existing driveway access comes in right here, you can see it, but on the proposed plan, this is going to be eliminated. There are a lot of concerns with this. It's a narrow driveway, people park in it, it's not very safe for emergency access. So that's going to be eliminated. The shared driveway connection would be right here into the parking lot on 104 Pleasant, and then everybody would go out through a conforming wide driveway right down here.
And you couldn't create 2 lots because there'd be no frontage on the second lot?
In the back right here?
Yeah.
Right?
And you couldn't combine them,
That adds a whole nother host of
issues?
issues for the app.
Combining them wouldn't really solve the problem because it arises based on the zoning district boundary being right here anyways.
So you'd still be in the other district.
Right.
Other
It'd
questions?
still be
Yes.
a hardship.
So where's the parking now, and are you quote grandfathered in for parking on the big building? Because it doesn't look like there's any parking now.
When you say the big building, you're talking about Five Pine?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Still?
the 3,
The
the
multifamily?
larger building, yeah.
Yeah, if you can go to the existing conditions plan for a second, Tracy. To answer your question, there's really not great parking there now, and I think that it is just an existing grandfathered condition, having not done the research on it. But the driveway comes in right here, and here's the garage. So cars typically will park, down here, and residents, I understand, sometimes use on-street parking too. But the idea with the new plan is that, if you can flip to that for a second, Tracy, the parking lot's going to be dramatically improved, basically on both properties. So there'll be, I think there shows 6, maybe 5 spaces, depending on how the ultimate configuration lines up
I see.
with ADA, and then there's going to be a shared parking arrangement. So part of the benefit down here is that on 104 Pleasant, the lower tenants are office tenants, and so they're not really using the parking spaces at the same time. So we can ask the planning board for a shared parking arrangement, and there'll be plenty of parking for some use by the units up here if they need to park down here and vice versa.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here who would like to be heard in favor of this appeal? Is there anyone here who would like to be heard in opposition to it? Please come forward. Why don't you have a seat over here if you would? Thank you very much. You swear to tell the truth and nothing but?
Yes, sir.
May we have your name, please?
Tim Dining,
How do you spell your last name, sir?
D-I-N-I-N-G.
As it's pronounced.
Just like it sounds.
Would you jot your name down on that log
Sure.
too, please? What would you like us to know, sir?
My wife and I have owned Seven Pine for 22 years and lived there, adjacent to Five Pine. And a little surprised this evening to hear that there's some grandfathered condition for Five Pine because it's been a single-family residence for the 22 years that we've lived next to it. Parking is a significant problem on Pine Street in general, and in terms of public safety. We've had many near misses in the mornings because when high school's in session, the kids park all along the length of the street, and there's no oversight from the parking officials or Concord Police. And even if I understand the proposal to access 104 Pleasant, but 104 Pleasant, the entrance to 104 Pleasant is on Pine Street. So it's just going to increase the volume of traffic going on and off Pine Street, 80 feet beyond where the current access is. I was also surprised to hear tonight the observation that the new duplex would be the same size as the garage. It's absolutely impossible. It's a two-car garage. So I don't see how you can, unless it's 4 stories, I don't see how you can fit a duplex on the same footprint as the current two-car garage. It's a very tight lot because the house has been grandfathered. So is ours. They're both very, very old houses. Five Pine's already within 6 feet of our property line. And so I think in terms of, no negative impact is absolutely negative impact. There aren't, this is presented as a 3-apartment house, but it wasn't until 4 months ago when the owner converted it to 3 apartments. Those are my primary points.
Any questions for Mr. Dining? Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard in opposition? I see a hand. Please come forward. Swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
I do.
May we have your name, please?
My name is Jane Besh, and with my husband, Tim Dining,
Don't forget to write your name down.
yes, we own the property at 7 Pine Street. And my husband made some of the points that already, concern us. One of the important points is for, the 22 years we have lived there, it has been a little old lady living there, and unbeknownst to us, there was any multi-use zoning for that single-family home. And the points I want to make, in addition to what my husband has already said about parking, have to do with, there is a reason that the city has drawn a line there to demarc residential houses from multi-use properties, and this would radically change this part of the street. And furthermore, I'm not sure why we have zoning laws if they can be so easily flouted in terms of parking, frontage, square footage. To change this from a single owner to 5 units is a dramatic change, and not in keeping with the historic nature of the neighborhood. I want to point out that Mr. Arnold said that there is no issue to public safety, health, or welfare, but clearly he does not see me in that picture, that this will dramatically change the nature of my property and drop my property value significantly. And so already we've been under construction all summer, and I would like to say that our property line goes up to 12 feet from the house, their house, the house that Mr. White has purchased. That's pretty close quarters. And so to add these units dramatically changes the quiet nature of the neighborhood. I would like to point out that Mr. Arnold also referenced that they're only 35 square feet short, but that's because he's emphasizing combining the 2 properties. There's a reason the 2 properties are not currently combined. One is a residential home and the other is a multi-use property. And so there is a granite wall that he has not mentioned that they're talking about having to remove to combine the 2 properties. It's about a 6-foot-tall granite wall. And so that alone also changes the noise level and the nature of the neighborhood. Finally, I would like to point out that Mr. White has taken down every tree, and we're talking mature trees, on the property on the corner. And to me, that has made an absolute increase in noise from Pleasant Street and the kind of feedback that we get on my property. So I am quite confused why we're even having these conversations when clearly the zoning laws already prohibit what Mr. White wants to do on this property. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Besh? Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard?
I believe we've already been heard. A letter was submitted to you, Tracy.
Yeah, the board has it, yep.
Okay, thanks.
Right. This is the letter from Ron King. And they are neighbors at 10 Pine Street. It's not clear to them why the case is on the docket. It says there's an existing multifamily renovation which should never have been allowed in this neighborhood residential district. The proposed duplex is also not allowed in this residential district. And lastly, it states there is insufficient frontage in this district for the existing building as well as for the proposed buildings. These violations and potential violations of the zoning ordinance should be enough to deny this application. We understand that the applicant may apply for a variance if hardship exists, and that a hardship is an unusual irregularity in the property that makes it uniquely difficult to comply fully with the zoning regulations, but in this case, there is absolutely no unusual irregularity. It is also our understanding that the purpose of zoning is to create a balanced city by regulating development, ensuring proper land use, maintaining local environments, and keeping property values stable by preventing the incompatibility of different land uses. We're fortunate that because of zoning, our residential neighborhood has been able to maintain its unique and beautiful character of large lots, historic houses, quiet roads, and so on. If a precedent is set that encourages the violation of all the regulations that help us and others maintain beautiful neighborhoods, then people in every neighborhood will live in fear that multifamily units, as well as other incompatible uses, might be allowed. And this is from Ron and Jerry King, who, as I said earlier, are at 10 Pine Street. Is that all we had in correspondence on that? Okay. Any comments from code enforcement?
Only that I would say there haven't been any building permits on this property since Energov was introduced in August, so I'm not sure what construction has gone on. There aren't any active building permits. And it is currently a three-family. Just to
Okay.
clarify, that's how we have it listed, so,
In the tax rolls?
yes.
Okay. Mr. Arnold, did you have a question?
No,
Well, can I ask Tracy a question?
Yes,
about
of
that?
course.
So, I mean, that, on the tax map, it says three-family, but if in actuality, 2 of the units were vacated, just one person was living there, would that vacate the
It
pre-existing use?
would, that wasn't,
You don't know anything
I
about
don't know
it, right?
anything about that.
But if that was,
If they had-
turned out to be true, that,
If those 2 units haven't been used, within, the last
some.
year or so, been actively used as a three-family, the grandfathering would have gone away.
Mr. Arnold?
I just wanted to clarify a few points. In terms of the size of the building, you can see on the plan, the proposed footprint is 25 by 35. It's slightly larger than the existing garage, not a whole lot. It would be two stories, one for each unit. On the lot size, there was, I guess, a discrepancy there. I wasn't suggesting that the lot size it's actually 3,500 square feet, not 35 square feet short. And that's not based on combining it or treating it as part of 104 Pleasant. Five Pine all by itself is only 3,500 square feet short. If you looked at the development as a whole, which we're not doing in a legal sense, the property is much bigger than it needs to be, and the total density for the number of units is less than what would be allowed on the 2 properties combined if they were all multifamily, which they're not. And then I guess just in the last letter from the Kings, I just wanted to clarify, the multifamily here is the use that's not allowed. My understanding is it's grandfathered. That's what I've been told by my client has been there. I don't have any information to the contrary on that. The duplex use, what we're proposing right now, is allowed by right in the zoning district, so I just want to be clear on that. The issue in that case really isn't so much are 2 additional units, a good thing or a bad thing on the property. The issue is really, are multiple principal uses permissible on this property, or should there be a variance to allow multiple principal uses on this property? So I think that's all I had for clarification.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
With that, we'll declare the public testimony portion of the hearing closed. We have a request to permit a 2-family unit to be built as a second use on the same property with an existing 3-family unit, which would not be allowed because the existing unit is itself non-compliant as a 3-family. We heard testimony that the shape and size of the lot create a hardship, and that the building that they are proposing to build would be allowed by right, assuming we did not have the issue of the existing building on the property. I'm going to start this one with Andrew. What do you think?
Well, first I want, I think it probably occurred to to all of us that, that there's a factual dispute about whether someone, this was being used as multifamily or not, which if it turns out that the neighbors are accurate about that, then obviously the developer is going to have a bigger problem than the outcome of this hearing, because that puts into jeopardy the 3-unit. But I don't think that factual dispute is really relevant to us, because our decision won't impact that use in that case. That would be an enforcement issue. But I do think that variances 2 and 3, I think if this was like a brand new duplex going up on this property, or a rehab of an existing duplex, they make perfect sense. I mean, it's an unusual narrow lot, it's an old lot, so so you have to be able to build on it. But to me, the fact that there's an existing alleged 3-unit, and now adding a 2-unit, when that's essentially, in my mind, effectively expanding a multiple unit on the property. It's just 2 different buildings, and it is a fine line on the zone, but there's obviously a transitional area of the city where you're going from really a largely single or two families all the way through Pine Street up until you hit Pleasant Street. So I do think that, I do agree with the neighbors, that line's there for a reason. So I'd be inclined to deny the variances.
Jim?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Andrew said, although I'm not convinced that the hardship, I'm not persuaded about the hardship,
That there is one.
that there is one, yeah.
And neither am I, and I agree with Andrew also.
Brenda?
Yeah, I think it's a great concept, being able to take the driveway off the road, but the hardship was the hard part for me. He did pay a significant amount of money for it, so I have a feeling it was sold to him as a multifamily. That's why I was looking up the city records, but at the same time, the hardship's the one that's the hard to, I love the idea of taking the driveway off the road, though. It's too bad.
As I look at it, the question of whether it's a three-family or a single-family is not
Yeah.
something we need to deal with. We can proceed on the assumption that what we've been told is true. And if it turns out not to be true, that gets into a whole different category of activity that we don't have any jurisdiction over, at least not at the moment. So I'm going to assume for purposes of my thinking that it's true. I don't think that the configuration of the lot creates a hardship in this case that would justify adding a new two-unit building to the property. It's also true, as we heard earlier, that if they made the original building a two-unit building, then they could build the second building without coming to us to discuss it. So they clearly have use of this property in the way that they intended, in the way that the zoning ordinance permits. I think the neighbors have a legitimate concern about the density, which, although Mr. Arnold said density really wasn't the issue, I think it is, in the sense that if three-family buildings are not permitted, obviously the writers of the ordinance had density in mind when they did that. So I'm inclined to agree with my colleagues, and I would support a finding that a variance is not justified. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I'd move to deny the variances.
Okay. We want to make sure that we give Tracy lots of good stuff to work with here.
I've got some good stuff, actually. You guys
Okay.
did a good job on that one.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion to deny, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous. The variance is now, wait a minute. There are actually three variances here.
Yeah,
That motion was for the allowed principal use, correct?
I intended it to be for all three,
All
but
three?
I didn't
Okay.
specify, so I would make the motion as to all three, to
All right.
deny all three.
And was the second for all three?
Yes.
All right. Did all those who voted on the motion understand it to be for all three?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. The record will show that all three variances were denied.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that brings us to the next case this evening, which is 0074, 2023, 52 Downing Street, RD Downtown Residential District, Trace and Antoinette Lantagne. Owners, if I have mispronounced your name, please correct me. The owners wish to expand the second story of their non-conforming single-family dwelling over an existing single-story footprint that encroaches into the 10-foot side setback. The owners are seeking the following variances: Article 28.841H, Table of Dimensional Regulations, and Article 28.85A1, Non-conforming Structures. You swear to tell the truth and nothing but it.
I sure do.
May we have your name for the record, please?
My name is Antoinette Lantine.
Lantine.
Everyone mispronounces it. And we're here to ask for the variance because of our current non-conforming structure is our home, built within that 10-foot setback on the side, on the west side. We are actually 2 feet 5 inches into that 10-foot setback.
Could I ask you to pause for a moment?
Sure.
Swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
I do.
And could we have your name, please?
Trace Lantine.
Very good. Sorry for that.
That's okay. And with our proposal for this addition, we would actually make our house slightly more conforming. Currently, on the east side that shares the property line with 50 and a half, our home encroaches into that 10-foot setback. With this hopeful addition, we'll be taking out a porch which encroaches on that side and make it slightly narrower. So what we're hoping to request is forgiveness for that 2 feet 5 inches on the west side.
Questions from the board?
So where are you located? Are you just beyond the guy who used to do junk removal? Just a little beyond the bank?
There was somebody that
Is that a
rented
landmark, the guy who
next-
used to do junk?
There was someone next to
Then
us
there
that
was
was
a
a
down.
renter and did junk removal.
Yes, okay, yeah, I know where you are.
And they're at, I believe, 54.
So we skipped 190 Manchester.
We did,
Okay, we skipped 190 Manchester Street.
Oh, did I?
you did,
Yeah.
but they were already up here, so I figured I'd mention it afterwards.
Shame on me.
Okay.
Well, because I think that's what he
I
was.
apologize
I think
to
he was
the
talking about the top of
Appellant of
Manchester
190
Street,
Manchester Street.
and they're down on Downing Street.
We'll be
so-
back to you very
So
shortly.
you don't have a dog kennel?
I don't have a dog. We have a dog who sometimes is in a kennel, but
That's
not a
why
dog
I was
kennel.
like, as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, he's on Manchester Street and we're on Downing on this one.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. You have caught me up in an egregious error.
Yeah, I was looking at this.
That's okay.
We're at 52 Downing Street, case 0074, 2023. Or at least I think we are.
We are now.
Is there anything else you'd like us to know?
The addition is going vertical, and it will not exceed the existing roof line of the rest of the house. We'll just bring it back farther to match the single-story kitchen that exists now.
Questions from the board?
So, I'm just,
I'll just get our bearings for
Yeah.
a second.
so it's a setback issue, and
that's the only thing I believe.
I'm sorry, how is it currently non-conforming?
It's our current home, old home.
Frontage?
Built 7 feet 7 inches from the property line, which gives us 2 feet 5 inches into that
Already.
10-foot setback.
So, but there's two variance requests. What's the?
So the other variance must be on the other side.
Do you know?
That
do you know,
non-conforming
Dr. Hunt?
structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? That's kind of do you happen to know what that is about, Dr. Hutton? Or variance number one?
Because it's going up within the setback, you have an expansion of the nonconformity,
What's-
and the table of dimensional regulations is the nonconformity. So it's two issues on the same,
Both regarding setback.
Same.
both regarding setback, correct?
But the existing setback is going to be maintained. You're not further encroaching.
Nope.
No.
Nope.
In fact,
You're
the
just going
structure
up.
will be narrower, just taller. So it will become more conforming, just not within the.
But
total.
the existing part is staying the same, right?
The,
Part of it is. The
Yeah,
part
okay.
that encroaches on the west setback
Will be the
will
same.
be the same. The part that is on the east setback will be made into conforming because we're changing the footprint.
yeah,
Oh, you're changing. Okay.
Yeah, on that particular
yeah,
side.
we're actually making the footprint smaller. just
Oh, you're
taller.
doing some
Yeah,
demolition.
if you can see, see the dotted line, that is a right-of-way for our neighbor, the Stockingers. And our home kind of goes into that, and that's also a 10-foot setback. You can see that there. So we're going to be bringing it, so in taking off our existing porch on the on the east side, the Stockinger side, it will make the house slightly more conforming, but not totally, because we are not changing the footprint on the west side.
I see. It's removing the porch.
Removing the porch, making it smaller by 3 feet.
Yeah,
Do you have a builder or?
yes.
Okay.
Other questions from the board? Brenda, you all set?
I think so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, I also have, I don't know if this got sent to you, but it is a letter from our neighbor on the east side, the Stockingers.
A letter of
to-
support.
Of support.
Pass it along? I don't think I've seen it.
Okay.
No, I don't.
I don't, She didn't say that she sent it to you, so I'm assuming she did.
That's from
Thank
50
you.
and a half Downing.
Usually give it to Chris, he'll read
sorry.
it. No, no, you're good.
The chairman will read it. Gentle people, oh, we've knocked up a notch here. This is from Perry Stockinger, who is at 50 and a half Downing Street, and her property abuts, I assume it's a she, that of Trace and Andy Latane, and they know the current setback in the site is slightly smaller than 10 feet. It's never been an issue for them. They want to, I know they want to remodel, and I have absolutely no reservations about their plans. I believe that ultimately there is unlikely to be any noticeable impact on my property. I hope you allow them to pursue their project. Comments from code enforcement?
Not on this one.
Okay. Did I ask for people in favor and opposed?
I don't think so.
Anyone in favor? Anyone opposed? With that, we'll declare the public testimony portion of the hearing closed. Notwithstanding my reckless disregard for procedure. We have a house at 52 Downing Street. We've heard a request of variance to put an addition on an existing section of the house because the house is non-conforming due to the age and configuration of the lot. No addition can be made without, as I understand it, a variance. Brenda, how do you look at this one?
I don't have any objections to this one. It seems like the only person that could possibly be impacted by it is the one that wrote the letter in support of it. And it looks like it's going to be a little bit more out of the way of the right-of-way that goes to the property behind. So I don't see any issues. They're staying within their footprint.
Andrew?
Yeah, I agree. It's obviously an older home, older lot, so updated lifestyles. I think it's reasonable that people want to have more space and want to build on the same footprint, which wouldn't be possible without maintaining the current setback. So I agree.
I have nothing to add.
And the fact that reducing the footprint, we tend to look favorably on that anytime we get a request like that.
I agree with my colleagues. I think the hardship stems from the configuration and size of the lot and the fact that the house predates, I don't doubt, the zoning ordinance that we have now. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous. Both variances are granted. I made the broad assumption that the
Motion was for
included
both.
Okay, and now for the neglected but certainly not disrespected case 0073, 2023, 190 Manchester Street, RH High Density Residential District, Chris Fogg for Top of the Hill Cooperative, Inc. owner. The applicant wishes to establish a commercial kennel where such a use is prohibited for a pet daycare. Applicant seeks a variance to Article 2824J, allowable principal and accessory uses in zoning districts to allow use H8. Do you swear to tell the truth, sir?
Yes, I do.
May we have your name, please?
My name is Christopher Fogg from Poskies.
What would you like us to know?
I am here to discuss opening a doggy daycare at 190 Manchester Street. Let's see. Our business will not cause any noise or barking concerns. We have a no strict and no excessive barking policy. We hope to put in a doggy daycare building to benefit the city of Concord residents and the neighboring residences nearby.
Can you tell us what the hardship is on this lot, in your view?
We have, sorry, I'm really new to this.
Quite all right?
The zoning is not currently, or we're applying for a variance.
Yes. And one of the requirements for the board to grant a variance is that we need to find that there's something about the configuration of the lot, ideally that's peculiar to the lot, that would create a hardship and prevent a reasonable use of the property.
I'm sorry. So should I talk to you about all the things that are put in place to prevent any hardships from happening?
No, this isn't hardship you would cause others. This is a hardship to you due to the configuration of the lot.
Oh, okay.
This is, in other words, one of the criteria for granting a variance is that you would suffer a hardship if we don't grant the variance. That's not justified. The
So
hardship is not justified.
We would not be able to open the building based if we do not receive the variance.
That part we already know.
Okay. So I'm so sorry.
Do you own the lot?
We do not own the lot. We will be leasing the lot to run our building.
Did you write this did you write this?
Yes, I did.
So there, maybe this will prompt you to kind of what Mr. Carley's getting at. It says you wrote that this building's on a parcel with a manufactured home park. Since zoning attempts are made not to split the parcels, the whole property is zoned residential. However, your building is surrounded on all sides, but one side by highway commercial.
Yes.
So I think what Mr. Carley's getting at is, what is it about this specific piece of land that makes this appropriate, even though it's zoned on, you know, apparently zoned high residential, which would generally mean a doggy daycare can't go there.
Yeah. So we are right on the edge, basically of a highly commercial area, in a very small piece of what is the residential high density. So we're furthest away from all of the residents nearby and closer to the buildings that are in the commercial part of the street.
Can you describe your operation, how things go, how the animals are managed, and what the hours are and days of the week and so on?
Absolutely. So we run currently a mobile doggy daycare where we pick dogs up in the morning, go out for a day of fun and drop them off. What we would use this building for is a place for them to be kind of during the middle of that time. Our building will be just doggy daycare. Will be open from about 6 o'clock in the morning until about 6 o'clock at night so that dogs can go there while their parents are away at work. We will not be doing any commercial kennel, even though that's what it says in the application. It's just what it's coined or termed as. We will just be a doggy daycare, and so dogs will not be there overnight. We will have a outdoor area for the dogs out behind the building, about 100 or so feet away from Manchester Street in the woods, almost not even noticeable. There will be a privacy fence to help make sure that the dogs are protected and also out of sight, and keeping them quiet from the neighborhood.
How many dogs do you anticipate having at one time?
We anticipate probably having about 15 dogs. However, once we get in there and have the space actually set up, we'll kind of figure that out for sure. We currently have 12 dogs that come to our program for our mobile doggy daycare. So we'll always start with 12, and we think our cap is about 15. But again, once we get in there, sometimes you have a Saint Bernard and sometimes you have a Chihuahua. So it's hard to put a number on that. Because the size of the dog and the behavior of the dog also changes the amount of dogs that can come. A dog that might run around the whole building might take up the space of a few dogs. A dog that's very quiet and not very active, you might allow for us to have a couple extra dogs.
How far away is the nearest residence?
The nearest residence is about 75 feet away, and that is the closest one. All of the rest are much further, more than double that.
Is this the small building like across the street from the Red Blazer?
No, it's,
So we are, 190 Manchester Street is at the entrance of the top of the hill mobile home community.
near 106?
I was thinking of the,
It's across from a Nissan dealer?
all the way down.
Tracy,
All the
can
way
we
down,
pull that?
right before you go down the hill, kind of on your way into Pembroke.
There's a vacant business now.
Yes, it used to be what you referred to as the junk removal guy.
Yep, yeah.
It used to be the junk removal
Seems to
business.
be one in every neighborhood.
Yeah.
As a practical matter,
used
could this building realistically be used as a residence, or would it have to be completely remodeled for that to happen?
Oh, I don't think it could ever be used as a residence.
Okay.
What is allowed by right there?
It's a high-density residential district, so it's a residential district. So when when the commercial use of the structure was abandoned, they sort of lost that.
I see. It was a pre-existing non-conforming use?
It was.
I see.
Yeah,
Oh, I see.
I think for some time it was the office, perhaps, for the mobile manufactured home park, I think at one point, way back when.
That would make sense.
Yeah, I don't remember.
That would be a logical use for it, but they probably decided they didn't need it.
In the
That's what
application.
folklore has told me. I'm not
It certainly wasn't
positive
ever,
on that.
it wasn't ever anybody's house.
No.
No.
I think it
know.
was a community building maybe at one point, I've been told. I've talked with a lot of people in the community since I have first looked at the building. We've had a lot of them call us to be potential customers of our dog walking and of the daycare once it opens. We've had a lot of support from them looking for a quality place and a reputable place that they can send their pets while they're at work. So I think at one point it was a building that served their community, and I think we can get it again to be one that serves their community.
Other questions?
Just really quick, because it says on the application that it's right next to an RO district, which would have allowed for a commercial.
Right, the city lot across the street in that section there is all RO. So RO is one of the only places in the city where you can have a commercial kennel is the only distinction we have for anything dog related.
Right.
So it all kind of comes under that umbrella, and there's only 2 districts that allow it, and RO is one of them.
And we are so unbelievably close.
Close.
You could throw a nickel. Have it land there.
Jim, you had a question?
Is it still gonna be mobile? Are you gonna pick up the dogs, or are people gonna bring their dogs there?
So we will, and actually I have a couple other things I can read that will clear up a couple other pieces, but we still will be mobile, so the dogs will not be there all day every day. The dogs will be picked up in the morning, brought to the building. They'll be there to play, to get situated, to be put with their assigned staff members to go out on their assigned trips. We handle our program very much like a child care program. Each set of dogs will have a counselor or a staff member and a schedule for them to follow. So the customers can either drop their dog off on a scheduled time frame. We'll use a scheduled drop-off and pickup procedure. So you'll be allotted a 15-minute time frame where you can come, drop off your dog, and then again 15 minutes at the end of the night where you can come and pick up your dog. So there will not be multiple cars at the same time. 1, to help with traffic, but 2, to help make sure there's only one dog going in and out of the building at a time. We'll have security gates on the front and on the back to make sure that any dogs coming in the building can come through the safety gate before they're unleashed or anything like that, so there's no potential for a dog getting out onto Manchester Street or out into the public. Our business follows what's called a quiet dog curriculum. It sounds a little silly when you're talking about dogs, but a quiet dog is a dog that's entertained, a dog that has something to do. A barking dog is a bored dog. And our goal will be to have every dog have something to do, to be there for a short period of time, and to make sure that there are no issues barking-wise or noise level-wise. That's what I would imagine if a daycare building was trying to move into my neighborhood. That would be my concern. And as a business owner and as the owner of this business, that's our top major concern, is to make sure that the dogs are quiet so that all of the dogs can be on their best behavior. We will use privacy fences on all of our outdoor area, as long as in addition to the metal fencing, to make sure that all dogs are safe. And we will follow a 1 staff to 4 dog ratio, so that there is adequate management of all dogs in case any sort of behavior or emergency situation were to arrive. We will be collecting and picking up pet waste immediately, so there'll be no health concerns. And we have a company that picks up pet waste once a week, but potentially even with us daily, that composts all of the pet waste. Our mission at Poskies is Pets, People, Planet, and so we hope to do our part, and that's part of that. So we also require all dogs that come in and out of our care to be vaccinated and to be licensed and registered with the town. So we help educate and help promote the importance of that, and so we hope that that will encourage more dogs to be vaccinated, help slow the spread of dog sicknesses, and also help encourage more dogs to become licensed and registered with the City of Concord. Let's see. We will cause no adverse effects on the area due to traffic. Our programming style allows for us to pick up and drop off our dogs. Many of our customers, many of our other customers that will fill up those remaining spaces that we have. Like I said before, we currently have 12 dogs in our program that go out for a day of fun. Those 12 dogs will come to this building. Any new dogs that will come in, our spots are already filling up with members of the mobile home park. So adding more traffic really probably won't happen because they'll be able to walk their dogs right to our front door. And the rest will be picked up by our business in one vehicle. The outdoor space will cause no overall change or noise level or to the appearance. It will sit over 100 feet away from the road, over 75 feet away from the nearest mobile home, and double that from any of the others. And there will be a privacy fence blocking the view of the dogs from the people and also the people from the dogs to help with safety and barking. There will be security gates everywhere to keep dogs in the area to make sure that no dogs are running around on Manchester Street. It will be in a wooded and forested area, so it will be almost hidden completely from the view of both the mobile home park and the traffic driving on Manchester Street. And there will be an added value to the community. Since COVID, there has been an influx of dogs, and a lot of them due to almost any time you're calling to find a boarding or daycare facility, they're full, they're at their max. No one has care for their dogs right now, and dogs are being returned to the shelters at huge numbers all the time, and we hope to do our part to give people a space here in Concord so that their dogs can be safe while they're away. Hoping to eliminate some of those. And we at Poskies work with nonprofits and local rescues to do our part. We work with In-Town Concord on a dog-friendly initiative and are hoping to help educate the City of Concord and encourage appropriate use of our downtown area with our dogs.
Questions?
That's it.
No.
Oh.
And the gist of it is that they support your proposal.
Gist of it is that they think that it would be a great addition to the area, hopefully help clean it up a little bit because it's in a little bit of a state of disrepair, and we hope to do quite a bit of work on the outside. And really nothing done on the inside, so just kind of a big open space as to what it is now.
Very good. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Chris, can you
Sorry.
make sure you sign in?
I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here who'd like to be heard in favor of this appeal? Please come forward. Swear to tell the truth, anything but.
My name's Anthony Almaquai.
Could you jot that down on there?
Sorry. Yeah, my name's Anthony Almaquai.
Want to write it down on the sign-in sheet? That would be great. That way we don't have to rely on my spelling.
Yes.
What would you like us to know?
Is that?
What would you like us to know?
Oh, well, I live on, I'm lot number 1. So-
In the mobile home park?
Yes.
Okay.
So where he's going, from where my trailer, I took pictures.
Yeah?
So, I mean, I like dogs, but I'm not even sure where he wants to put his kennels. If you wanna come up here and,
No, we can't do it that way.
All
Why
right,
don't you-
but I
If you've
can-
got questions,
can I
go ahead
pass
and
it
lay them
around,
out
though?
for us.
so
to
you
pass
can
on
see
the
what I'm
picture?
talking about?
Sure, pass it along.
Okay. This is where my trailer is. I was told is where he wants to put some kennels. And from there to there is 75 feet. He wants to go from this tree to this tree where it's 35 feet.
Okay.
Dr. Huck, would it be
That's what I was
possible
told.
to locate his,
So.
His house on that?
His house is right here.
is that your house?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the walk area would be right behind the building, I believe. Is that right, Chris? Nope.
Yeah, that looks,
So ours would be to the left more,
yeah.
right there. But a lot smaller.
Is there any fences or any like landscape buffer there right now? Between the trailer?
Yeah, that's my trailer, that picture.
Is there any like separation from your?
No, there's nothing, that's the driveway right there. You come in, you just go right around that building. You can see those two dark marks, those are my vehicles.
So do you have concerns about this?
What's that?
Do you have concerns about this? Are you,
Well, kinda, I don't want a lot of traffic back there.
uh-huh.
And he's gotta go from that door to, I guess that's where he's gonna put the kennels. I don't want a lot of noise. You know, he's saying he's gonna be opening up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Do I have to hear dogs 6 o'clock in the morning, traffic going in and out of there?
Okay, did you have any other
And-
concerns?
Is there any other kennels going up besides in the woods? Is there some going on the side of this building? He didn't exactly explain where
They
he's
haven't
go-
said that there would be any additions to the building.
Yeah, he didn't explain where he's putting these kennels. I mean, is he getting dogs and putting dogs out there at 6
There will be a
o'clock?
chance for him to do that.
Huh?
There will be a chance for him to do that.
Yeah, if he's putting dogs out there at 6 o'clock in the morning,
But there will be a chance for him to show where the kennels would, or the dog run would go. Did you have other concerns?
because if I open up my window every morning, I mean, I'm gonna have dogs out there. He said they pick up this, the poop every day right away. But I mean, where's he putting this outside? Does he have a bin outside to put this stuff in? He said they're picking it up. Where is they putting it though? He didn't explain. Bring it inside the building, or does he have something outside the building?
We'll ask him to
I
clarify
mean,
that.
this is my window to my trailer.
Mm-hmm.
What if you put up a fence? Would that meet your concerns?
Can't put a fence.
Oh, you can't.
Yeah. Well, if you look up right there, goes right around. We go in circles there.
I believe he said the kennel itself area would have fencing and it would have privacy so that you wouldn't see the dogs wouldn't see the people.
I think when he comes back up, I'll have him clarify
Yeah.
that it's
We'll get
not a
him to
kennel
clarify
because
that.
the dog's not staying overnight.
We won't speak on his behalf.
They're not overnight.
Yeah, okay.
Is there anything else you have concerns about?
No, just that, but, I mean, they didn't really explain how much kennels they're putting back there either.
Well, we'll get all those answers for you. Thank you very much.
Right.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Please come forward. Swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
Swear to tell the truth.
Please have a seat and after signing in. And could we have your name, please?
Yes, my name's Sean White. I'm operations manager at the Top of the Hill Co-op. So I'm the one that was renting the building to him through the co-op. So what he wants to do, like he explained kind of, but there's some things that kind of didn't get clarified. There is going to be 24-hour surveillance. So all 5 ward members can have surveillance of the dogs. So if there is barking of the dogs, we would know about it. And we made it very clear that we can't have that type of dogs there, because obviously Tony lives right next door. As far as the fence goes, he did want to put up a fence as you walk out the door to the back of the building. Just from, if you look at that little building right there, it's kind of like the bulk at the other end. It's kind of like, yeah, right
Yeah,
there.
you can go right up.
Yeah,
and
go up
point.
there and point that out to us.
So he did want to put a fence right here, just to go over, right there, just so the dogs could come out and go in. There'd be a fence all the way up here. And then over here in the woods, which is 75 feet away, it's kind of tucked in the woods. He wanted to put a fence up in here where the dogs could run around.
You mean like a pen?
Yeah, yeah, and it's, like he said, it would be all fenced off and stuff like that.
So would it be fenced from the building out to the pen
Nope,
area?
there would be no
Okay.
fence here, because it's a right of way, so he can't block
Okay,
it.
gotcha.
So he had to put the fence, the thing would be going, basically, there's a field out back, and it would go straight out to the field and then come up and go over. It's not real big.
So it'd be completely enclosed?
Yeah, that
Just
would.
not attached to the
Right.
house or the
It'd be
structure?
enclosed, but just not attached to the building.
Okay.
And, yeah, I mean, as far as 6 o'clock in the morning for the dogs, I agree with Tony. He wouldn't want to put them out in the kennels that early, and I think we could fix that problem. I don't think that would be a real problem. But as far as, we're just trying to rent the building out. There's not really a whole lot of space, people looking for space, and, that's kind of like, that property pays our taxes for the park. And each month that we lose, money here, we're going in the hole.
No pressure?
Yeah. So,
Was that building ever a home or residence?
No. It's always been businesses. It was New Hampshire Junk Removal. It was a pool company before that. It's been a few different businesses in there. There's really never been an issue, as far as I know of.
But you guys own it?
Yeah, we own it.
Okay.
And we can't sell it because it's connected to that mobile home. So it kind of like, and not that we'd probably not want to sell it, just because like I said, it pays our taxes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Either in favor or in opposition? Any comments from code enforcement?
Nope.
Did we want to give him he's.
Yes.
Jim.
Mr. Fogg, would you like to come forward and offer factual clarification in response to anything you've heard?
I don't know, do you guys have access to
Yep.
these images? So
I
on
believe
there,
we
it
do.
does point out where the fences will be.
Oh, with that error?
Maybe not those.
Oh, is it the lower left-hand picture,
Lower left-hand picture, yes.
the white areas?
Yep. So there is two of them. One is right directly behind, which is connected, which is the security gate that I talked about earlier. So outside that back door, it is a security fence. So if that door were to open or if somebody were to bring a dog outside, they're in a fenced-in area. So that is that first one that's directly connected to that building. The one that is farther out, the one that is kind of situated right in the wooded area, in the forested area, is what the gentleman was saying is the commercial kennel. So I think he's under the impression that the commercial kennel is that we're going to be boarding dogs overnight and having multiple spaces for them to be out and about during the day. This space is one enclosed area, kind of like a dog park. So when we do have dogs there, our staff member can bring their 4 dogs out to play off leash in that fenced in area and then back inside, if that makes sense. So it's just kind of like a fenced in area for the dogs to play off leash. It is not what I think some people are thinking as kennels, where lots of dogs will be housed barking at a gate. It'll be an area where they could play and then go back inside by leash.
Other questions for Mr. Fogg?
And I do believe that there was a question raised about if there could be a fence in between the gentleman's house and the building. The fence of the of where the dogs go will serve as that fence. So he won't have any ability to see dogs in there or that sort of thing. And again, I wanted to clarify that we do follow what's called a quiet dog curriculum, and we would not allow for dogs to stay in our program that do cause barking, and we would not have dogs out at 6 a.m. in the morning, just allowing them to be dropped off by their owners. They would be inside our building at that time of day.
So what would the earliest you would have dogs outside?
I would say that probably every hour on the hour, dogs will be going out to go to the bathroom. So if a dog gets dropped off at 6, then by 7 o'clock, that dog will have to be going outside to go to the bathroom. We'll probably have it, but I would say probably a 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock time where dogs can be out actively playing, but at least to allow for pottying during the morning hours.
What do you do with the waste?
Pet waste will be picked up and collected by a company that composts it, actually.
Where would you store it in relationship to that building?
So if you can basically kind of where that bus is.
You can go up there and show us.
Yep. There'll be a dumpster of some kind and a trash barrel, and each day any stuff that is picked up will be put in a bag. Or I don't know if you have dogs yourself, but there's a company called Earth Friendly biodegradable dog poop bags. Every dog waste will be picked up in a biodegradable bag, brought into the dumpster area here, which will have one bucket that will be daily or weekly, depending on what it is, picked up by the company and disposed of. We won't, I would like to say that I know exactly, but when it is full, they will take it. I can't say how often it will be full, and it is supposed to be and is scent proof. However, right now we don't use that exact company because we do a mobile doggy daycare, so we dispose of all of our poop very quickly. This will be the first time we'll be collecting it in one of their future compost bins, but it is supposed to be scentless. And every individual one will be in its own individual waste bag.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Any comments from code enforcement?
Nope.
Can I just ask a question? If we were to grant this, and despite his best intentions, there's complaints about barking from the neighbor. I mean, how does I know that might not be you, but how does code or how does the city handle that with the variance being granted? I mean, but the noise ordinance is still valid, right?
Noise ordinance is still valid. I don't have a lot of detail on the noise ordinance because the code administrator usually deals with the noise complaints,
Yeah.
but we do have a noise ordinance and it would still pertain to this property.
And then as a practical matter, I mean, we've asked you and your predecessors this question many times, but in this context, how enforceable are his representations about like when the dogs will be out? And
They're more enforceable if you place conditions, because or at least put them in the motion so that when you formulate your motion, that you're specific that the representations they made about the fencing, the waste removal, and the noise.
And the hours. Okay.
Are specifically to be enforced.
thank you.
Very good. With that, we'll declare the public testimony portion of the hearing closed. We have a request for, is it just one variance? Yes, just one variance for the conversion of a commercial building, which happens to be in a residential neighborhood. We heard testimony that it has always been a commercial building, conversion to a doggy daycare facility. I'm going to start the discussion with Brenda Perkins.
So, yeah, I'm not object to it. I know, I'm familiar with the lot, so I know that there's enough of a quick, easy off of Manchester Street pull around that I don't see cars needing to go behind the building, which I know was part of the concern of the closest neighbor. And the actual kennel is gonna still be 75 feet away from the property, so, and it is right next to a Nichols throw, according to, we're in a zone that would allow for it, so.
Very good. Andrew?
I have some, I'm inclined to agree, and I'd be inclined to vote to approve, although I do have some concerns, or not concerns, but I do think the neighbor's position is valid. I think it actually helps the property values because they really need, it's all one lot, not one lot, but it's all sort of one combined economic unit. They need a viable tenant there to pay that, to help, pay their taxes. But I think, given its close proximity to the commercial, that it really has no viable use for a non-commercial. I mean, clearly a commercial use should be approved. That there is a risk of the dogs barking, so I think his representations we need to somehow capture in the motion to sort of make sure they're enforceable, because if you just never know what might happen. He seems like a very sincere, good owner, but you just never know what the future might hold. And if it's a situation where there's a bunch of dogs out at 6 in the morning barking a lot, I do think that would infringe on the neighbor, and we should try to, protect against that.
Chip?
Yeah, I agree with what has been said. I think one of the representations was that it would be no more than 15 dogs. I think that would help control the concerns of the neighbor, noise, waste, things like that. So I would, when Andrew makes the motion, I'll have him include that.
Nick?
Yeah, I agree. And also, we heard from the park board that they're also concerned about noise and would certainly be able to police that on behalf of the abutter.
I presume that given the concern that we heard from the board, that it'll be a condition of the lease, that it doesn't become a nuisance to the neighbors.
Is it right to say how many dogs, or, I mean?
We heard testimony of 15 dogs, so yeah, we could make a condition.
Could I say something?
Sure.
My only thought is that, again, if it's noise, the number of dogs doesn't attribute to one dog barking. And again, if we set ourselves at a number before we've moved in, we potentially are setting ourselves up to a point where it is not financially feasible for us to maintain it. So I think that we would be better off having the board in their agreement with us be able to maintain the quality, I think, for the neighborhood. Because if it was 17 dogs or 13 dogs, I don't think it'll change the noise or the concerns with the number of dogs, just the behavior of the dogs that are attending.
Very good, thank
Yeah.
you.
I guess, I think
Leave the
there's
number out.
uniqueness here because it's the neighbors are all in one community, and that community is contracting with the
Right.
with the tenant. Many of those issues can be addressed there.
I agree with my colleagues. I think the lot clearly represents a hardship. The configuration of the lot and the building is not going to be a residential structure under any circumstances. And I would support a motion with the conditions that we've discussed that have been offered to us by the appellant in terms of the hours, the way the place is going to be managed, the management of sound, and other activities on the site. All that being accounted for, I think this is a reasonable use. Would anyone care to make a motion?
Before I make the motion, this is going to be a little challenging. I mean, the stab that I would make it at sort of a condition, I don't know if it needs to be a condition or just sort of my summary of the representation, is that in the early hours, the yard is going to be used for using the bathroom, but not just a general off-leash time. So off-leash time would be relegated to 9 a.m. or later. That is what the testimony was.
If that's what needs to happen, I don't know if 9 o'clock, if it's based on the
We think that's-
neighbors in the area having a time.
I don't want to start a dialogue
Yeah,
back and
Yeah.
forth here.
But we
Thank
can't
you,
really-
thank
we
you
can't
for your
really go
testimony.
back and forth anymore. I mean,
think-
I don't know if it could be 8. I'm just saying this to the board right now.
Yeah.
Maybe I would summarize it by saying that the mobile home community should come up with a standard that
I think the board members are the ones that are leasing it to him, and they're also gonna be the same ones that are gonna hear the complaints from the neighborhood if there's an issue. So I think we can leave that to them, to how they write the lease with the,
Yes, I'd support a motion, as I said, that incorporated as conditions the stipulations that the
way it
appellant
was-
made
yeah.
during his presentation. And I'd be reasonably confident that that would result in a reasonable use, and we've already discussed, from my point of view, what hardship is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Were you making a motion?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to approve. I'm not gonna put a specific condition, guys. I think it's too hard to formulate, but I think the record is pretty clear on what the applicant said.
Okay. Anybody willing to second this one?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous. The variance is granted. You're all set.
Use the bathroom.
You're all set as far as we're concerned. Okay. Gentlemen, the next case is case 0077, 2023, 177 North Main Street, CU, Urban Commercial District. Jonathan Chorlian for Concord Coalition to End Homelessness is the owner. 177 Rear North Main Street is also included in this application. Merger of these lots will be required to comply with the site's plans. We are also going to be hearing at the same time case 0078, 2023, 14-20, Washington Street, RD, Downtown Residential District. Jonathan Chorlian for Concord Coalition to End Homelessness is the owner. In the case of the first case, they are requesting relief from Article 2845D2, maximum lot coverage and density, to permit 30 dwelling units on a .74 buildable acre parcel where 8 units are permitted, 12 units per buildable acre. Note, prior to the hearing, the board must determine whether this request is materially different from a former request, which we will review in a moment. Article 2845D5, perimeter buffer required to permit parking, patios, and buildings within the perimeter buffer required for multifamily development. Article 2841H, table of dimensional regulations, to permit private patios to be no less than 5 feet from a front property line where 15 feet is required. Article 2872, off-street parking requirements, to permit 49 parking spaces for a 30-unit multifamily development where 60 parking spaces are required. And Article 28714, off-street loading area for refuse containers, to permit refuse containers to be located within 18 feet of a residential district boundary where 25 feet is required. Under case 0078, 2023, the applicant wishes to continue the nonconforming use of land as a parking lot and define the parking spaces to measure 8.5 feet wide by 17 feet long and 4 spaces to measure 8.5 by 15 feet long, and seeks a variance to Article 2877D, parking area design standards, where standard parking spaces are required to be 9 by 19. Gentlemen, swear to tell the truth and nothing but. We're all back? Very good. Would you identify yourselves for the record as you testify and fill us in on what you'd like us to know? Well, actually, before you do that, I do have to take care of the question of whether or not, as those of you who were here before will recall, the board only acted on the question of the number of units that was requested, and we denied that variance. We did not act on any of the other variances. We tabled those. So first, I want to ask the board, having reviewed the submissions, if we consider that this is a new case, materially different. I'm seeing some nods. Would anyone care to make a motion so we can make it formal?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. No one is opposed?
I do have a question probably for Dr. Hutton, though.
Okay.
Two questions. Can we rely on the record from the previous proceeding?
Yes.
Okay.
You need to state that you're doing
Yeah.
that, though.
Okay.
I believe that's how we left it at the last
Okay.
meeting, that we would do.
All right. And can I just get with regard to what was tabled and what was denied?
So,
Working from the agenda.
those applications that were tabled have been withdrawn, so there's nothing currently on the table.
Okay, so it is a new
This
application.
is a new application.
Okay.
Before we move on, just because of the attention of this case, I just want to say at least my reasoning for approving because superficially this would appear to be a fairly minor change, going from 34 to 30 when only 12 are allowed, but in the context of this application, And in the context of our previous remarks, you know, understanding that there's an existing church with a large amount of space in it that somebody needs to or wants to use in some fashion, I think going from 34 to 30 in my mind is a material change, because it's not going to be anywhere close to 12. It's what, you know, I think I had recognized previously.
And then
Very
I think it would, if it's okay, given the fact that we're based on the previous record, it would be helpful to me is that when the applicant goes through it to let us know what has changed since he was here last month.
Very good.
Okay, thanks.
Everybody clear on where we're at? Gentlemen?
So, just to make life easier, we've got slides. These are hard copies of those, number one. And then this, number two, is a report from Deputy City Manager Matt Walsh to the City Council on this project in the context of our 7090 application, but I'll refer to it in a couple of points. We will try to make this a lot more streamlined than last time and really keying on the differences.
Would you identify yourselves for the record?
I'm Jonathan Chorlian.
John Arnold.
Ben Kelly.
Did I swear you all in?
Yes.
I thought I did.
So
Mr. Charlie?
off we go. We're here for the First Church redevelopment. I'll remind you, it's a 265-foot-long building with a small amount of infill, 26,000 square feet of space without any additions. That's what we're trying to repurpose, and that will come up when we talk about density. One of the things I hadn't realized last time, but it was brought to my attention in we are applying for so-called RSA 79E relief from the City Council, and Matt Walsh, the Deputy City Manager, issued a report to the City Council pointing out a number of interesting things, including, I always knew it was an old building. He has noted that it's actually eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places, which kind of puts it in an even higher tier of historical building. There's the inside, you've seen it. There's the enormous lawn on the north side that we're trying to retain as much as possible of, and that's the hideous parking lot on the south side that we're trying to eliminate as much as possible of. There's the overall site. As we pointed out last time, it's actually 4 different lots in 2 different zoning districts. For some reason, the church spans 2 different lots that will be merged as part of this context. Those are in the CU district. And then there are these 2 standalone lots. This little 8-space lot on Rollins Street and the main parking lot, which are standalone parcels in RD. There's also a little bit of parking on the north side of that church parcel. We talked a little bit about rights of way last time. There are 3 that burden this property. The plan last time we talked about retaining that one, which is benefiting the Islamic Center, and then this one benefiting the Islamic Center, and we were going to relocate this right-of-way. The new plan retains the right-of-way for 20.5 Washington Street, and you'll see how that plays out. We are at 30 units. I will not burden you with how exactly we did that, but we've tried to balance a series of objectives, including not increasing the bedroom count, since even though there was some skepticism on the part of the board about whether that is a legitimate proxy for parking, in our minds it really is. So there are 30 units now, down from 34, with no increase in the number of bedrooms.
Which is 44.
We essentially combined 4 pairs of 1-bedroom units into 2, now among the largest 2-bedroom units. As a result, the square footage per unit now increases from about 760 feet per unit to about 865 feet per unit. That includes the share of common areas. Obviously, the rents have increased since we have eliminated 4 of the lower priced units, being the 8 of the smaller 1-bedrooms and with 2 bedrooms. But we've tried to be mindful of, from a number of perspectives, including sort of the marketing perspective, about not making the units too large and too expensive. And that's how we have struck the balance that we have. Matt Walsh's report that you've been provided with, I mean, we always have these interesting discussions here about sort of economics and viability, and I know that's not your purview, but I think to understand the number of units, there has to be at least sort of a brief discussion about that. And, you know, we stand up here as developers and we say we're gonna tell the truth, and we do, but I think Matt's report is particularly helpful because it's a independent, third-party view, and I will summarize points of that report to say he concluded that he was looking at a 33-unit scheme, which and he concluded, as we had represented last time, that is a marginally viable project, and I would say that is true. The reduction in units, and I appreciate the decision on the materiality. I would have told you I think it's material because it's a project that is trying to keep its nose above water, and the reduction of the units we've been able to survive from a viability standpoint, in part due to the generosity of the Coalition to End Homelessness by accommodating us with a small purchase price reduction. So that's how we get to 30. One of the things that it does, I think, and Chairman Carley pointed this out, observed last time, is that, you know, maybe a small reduction in the number of units would help reduce the number of required parking spaces, which might give us a little bit more breathing room to present to you something that looks a little bit better from a site and parking standpoint. I think we've been able to do that. So that's the plan. I'll call it the July plan that you saw. I think what raised the most eyebrows was these tandem spaces. I think we could have made those work. We would have assigned them to those pairs of tandem spaces to the larger units, so people would be sharing those 2 spaces with someone in the other unit, but certainly that's not an ideal situation. Those are now gone. What we've been able to do is pick up a couple of spaces up here, 1 space there, we've added a space there, and what we have done is we have restored this 20.5 Washington Street driveway, which then gained us 2 spaces right here, and as a result, we gained 7 spaces. By reducing to 30 units from 34, the parking requirement drops by 8. We just picked up 7 spaces, so now when I drop these 8 spaces off, I'm -1. So my parking requirement dropped by 8, and I only lost 1 space. And that's what the site looks like now.
How many spaces now and how many spaces last month?
We have 49 now, 50 last month. And I would, 68 were required last month. 60 and 60 are required now. And I would submit, I know it sounds odd, that this 49 space lot is bigger than the 50 space lot before. And the reason I would say that is when you assign parking spaces in any parking lot, only the assigned user can use it. If they're not there, they're at work, on vacation, took their dog to the kennel, you know, no one else can use that spot. Whereas when you don't have assigned spaces, you use a permit system, and I mean, it's no big secret, we oversubscribe. So the previous lot that we showed you would be sort of half assigned and half permitted, which is a little bit of a, you know, wouldn't work as efficiently. Now we have 49 spaces, none of which are assigned, and realistically, using a 25% oversubscription factor, which is pretty conservative in my experience, you're at 60 permits, which, so I can't show you 60 spaces, but I will have more than 60 permits, and that's how I'm not gonna hand out spaces, I'm gonna hand out permits. And I only have 44 bedrooms, so we're only initially gonna hand out 44 permits. So, I mean, I told you last time I think we have 10 spaces too many. I'll say I think we have 12 spaces too many this time. If that turns out to be true a couple years down the road, Maybe there are fewer spaces. Maybe there's a new ordinance that allows us to do that. Maybe we come back. I don't know. But I do, under oath, believe we have at least 10 spaces too many. But I also understand all of our jobs would be much harder if I walked in and said we only have 39 spaces. So, one of the things we're most proud of is that despite repurposing this building, providing what I think is more than adequate parking, we're able to do it in a way that reduces the total impervious on the site. And most importantly, it restores green space in the most important areas. This is all an asphalt area right next to the Islamic Center. It becomes a green space. We pull that away. All these little dots of green are currently asphalt or concrete. Sorry. And then with the elimination of the tandem spaces, we have this quite large area of green space that, even though it will be owned by this property, really reads like the lawn of 20 and a half Washington Street. As you'll notice, we still have our trash areas and patios that you saw last time. And then we end up with a landscape plan that looks something like that, which is very similar to what you saw last time. I think we're particularly proud of the tree line, the streetscape, and all those little arrows that I put on. Those are all trees that are proposed to be located in areas that are currently impervious. So with these changes, we have actually reduced the required variances from, I think it was 12 last time, to 6. I'll just quickly go through some of those from sort of a developer standpoint, and I'll let John speak to more of the technical criteria. The first one's obviously the density variance. I think everybody on the board, even the 3 that voted against the variance, agreed that sort of this is the classic white elephant sort of hardship. You know, that doesn't give you a blank check to put 99 units in, but the reason we're at the number of units, 30, is for the reasons I had explained before. It's a 265-foot long, 26,000 square foot volume. We are not adding any footprint to the building in terms of occupied space. We're just trying to reuse that space. The perimeter buffer is sort of this odd little piece of the ordinance. We dealt with it with you on my Rollins Court Pocket neighborhood. Despite the fact that this is one of the largest lots in this zoning district, if you literally enforce the 50-foot perimeter buffer, it's an undevelopable site. We are not adding very much to the site, as you saw from the previous slides, but we wouldn't be able to do any of that with the perimeter buffer applying. Patios and decks, we have, you know, that's really a function of this building sits quite close to the Main Street and Washington Street property lines. We propose 3 small patios for 3 of the units, and then to overlay the existing stair in the front with a community deck. Those fall somewhat within the setback, but not so much within the setback that we aren't able to produce that landscape buffer and tree line that we showed you. Trash, this is sort of one of the hyper-technical requirements. We are asking for a setback of the trash from our own other property, the parking lot. It is not a variance with respect to a setback from anyone else's property other than our own parking lot. Parking quantity. There's lovely tables. We're asking for essentially a variance for 11 spaces, 49 where 60 are required. That's a reduction from earlier. I know we don't have the proposed ordinance in front of us, but it would actually require 39. We have 5 more spaces than we do bedrooms, which is sort of our internal proxy. But as I mentioned, I don't really think of this as a 49 space parking lot. I think of this as a 62 permit parking lot. And by that measure, I think we have far more than we need. And lastly, these hybrid spaces. you've granted us variances for these on a couple other projects. I'm not saying they would work well on a mall project, you know, where no one knows each other, but in the context of a project where everybody who parks there sort of is working in the same office building or living in the same community, I think there's an additional level of care and courtesy. People parking in the middle of parking spaces, not dinging each other's cars. I've had 0 complaints at these 2 other properties that have hybrid spaces. What I do find is, if at all possible, maintaining the 24-foot standard aisle width is important. Basically, a standard parking space is 19 feet long, so unless you have 62 feet, 19 plus 24 plus 19, that's 62 feet, you cannot achieve a fully conforming parking lot. And this is far less than 62 feet. The current parking lot that's striped there now is non-conforming. What we're really doing is creating the 24-foot aisle, and then all of my parking spaces, save for those 4 red ones, I am able to achieve 17 feet in length. I know in other contexts, you see parking lots with a mix of compacts and standards. I just think that's a disaster. No one ever follows the signs. The truck parks in the compact space, which then takes 3 spaces. It's a disaster. This works much better. Very few cars are, in this day and age, longer than 17 feet. The couple that will extend slightly into your 24-foot aisle, which will still be manageable. And then the 8.5 foot width on the spaces, I think helps us to increase the impervious, particularly at the throat to the building. I'm not a huge fan, honestly, of the 4 slightly smaller spaces. That's really the result of the throat choking down particularly narrowly there. This space, they're not compact size, which is 8 by 15. They're all still 8.5 feet wide. That first space is about 8.5 by 15, and then 15.5, and 16, and 16.5. We will sign those and be quite emphatic on who parks there. And that's a slide we don't need. So,
Will you continue to manage this building after?
yes, Ben will, has the expertise. And as I had said before, the plan is a long-term hold.
I'm sorry, you said your practice is not to have assigned spots, but the red spots will be assigned?
We will, they will not be assigned, but the signage will be emphatic that those are for small vehicles or motorcycles.
So you're erring on protecting the 24-foot aisle?
I am erring on protecting the 24-foot aisle.
Okay.
And, yeah, like this is I mean, that's Sacred Heart. There are some condominium owners that park in there, and employees from the federal district court and probation services, and, you know, they work together, never had a problem. This is part of our Granite Center project behind Dixon Avenue. I mean, there are multiple office tenants, the Business and Industry Association, Liberty Utilities. Again, we've never had a complaint that those hybrid spaces are problematic.
Very good.
So the application and the testimony last time touched on the variance criteria in more detail. I just want to try and summarize a few things and point out some changes or highlights since last time. On the public interest and the spirit of the ordinance criteria, none of these variances are going to cause any threats to public safety, health, or welfare, and they're not going to alter the essential character of the neighborhood. The existing building is there. There really aren't any meaningful changes to the exterior of the building, so what's there in terms of character is what's there. The changes to the parking lot are all changes to improve the layout and to add green space, so those are good improvements. And a number of existing nonconformities are being eliminated. I'd say yes, that when you have 30 apartments here versus 8 that are allowed, you're going to have more people coming in and out. You can't avoid that, but I think that when you compare that to really any use that could go into a building this size, or even the prior church, that volume of people with 30 apartments is relatively minor compared to what was there and what could be there. On the substantial justice, the balancing test of the harm to the general public versus the benefit to the applicant, in our view, none of these variances harm the general public in any way. And as Jonathan pointed out in the memo from Matt Walsh, which you have in your packets, one of the things it had to look at is whether the project satisfies any one of 5 statutory public benefits. And it needs to satisfy at least one in order to qualify for the program. And what Matt Walsh concluded in the memo is that it doesn't meet one of the criteria, it meets every single one of the 5. And so specifically, that it enhances the economic vitality of downtown, it protects a historically significant building, it reuses existing building stock and promotes energy efficiency, it helps reduce urban sprawl, and it increases residential housing opportunities. And all of those are defined statutory public benefits that Matt's memo finds have been met or will be met by this project. On the property values, we previously submitted a broker letter opining that none of the variances will negatively impact property values. I think that's easy to see given that the only physical changes to the property are really to add green space and other visual enhancements outside. And on the hardship, the uniqueness here, which we've talked about at length, is really this existing church building and how it's situated on this lot. It makes it a real challenge to repurpose that building. And the church obviously has not been successful. It can't keep going. Hasn't been there for a few years. And that same building size and configuration that's driving the number of units that go into that also drive or create the hardship for the remaining variances. Jonathan went through those, but the existing building and parking lots are already within the required 50-foot buffer, and there's really no buildable area on the lot if the 50-foot buffer was strictly enforced. The church building, the way it sits right now, is already so close to the lot lines that there isn't room to put reasonable amenities for apartments like these patios and decks that are being proposed, and the encroachment into the setbacks is really very minor. They're modest patios and decks, nothing outlandish. There's not enough room physically between the edge of the building and the residential district boundary to provide 25 feet of separation for the trash enclosures. But as Jonathan pointed out, that separation is really just to the existing parking lot for the church. So if you look at the actual separation that's provided between the refuse containers and the nearest residential property, it's more than 100 feet. So it more than satisfies the purpose and the intent of that buffer requirement, that setback requirement. And physically, the constraints of the property, there's just not enough land to provide the required 60 parking spaces. But the reality is the building is so big that really whatever use went into it wouldn't have enough land area to provide the required parking. And I think that with 30 units and the required 60 spaces is probably on the low end of the spectrum. If you think about the public assembly use that goes for a church and the size of this church, the required parking demand would be well over 60 spaces. Just to put it in context, a few months ago we were in for the Christ the King Parish down on South Main Street, and one of the variances had to do with the number of parking spaces there too. That church is a similar sized church. It's actually a little smaller than this church, and the required spaces for that were 170. So there were some comments at the last hearing about a perception that there was an overburdening of the lot that was being driven by the number of units here. And I'd just like to point out that I think we're actually really decreasing the burden on the lot. Currently, the existing parking lot is basically all pavement, and that's really being pulled back and a lot of green space is being added. When the property was operating at a church, I think the so-called burden on the property was much higher, specifically in terms of the required parking spaces, as I mentioned a moment ago. And the intensity of the use here, I think, is actually going way down compared to the historic use. Second, the changes that Jonathan ran through with the plan since the last hearing, we're really trying to reduce those burdens even further. And third, when you look at the public interest criteria and whether the proposal will alter the essential character of the neighborhood, you look at what else is going on around it. And, you know, one of the most vocal opponents at the last hearing was the Islamic Center, and we appreciate their feedback and have spent a lot of time trying to work with them. But the parking deficiency on their lot is greater than the parking deficiency that we're proposing on our lot. And I think that's relevant for purposes of the public interest criteria and the character of the neighborhood. So I think that's it in terms of the variance criteria. The bottom line is that if the project goes forward, it's going to save a beautiful historical building. It's going to provide meaningful housing stock for the city, and it's going to dramatically improve the appearance and use of the property from what's there today.
Mr. Kelly, did you want to chime in on anything?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Questions from the board?
I had one. I don't recall there being an issue with the tandem parking spaces.
There was for me.
Was there?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we surmised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had some concern about it, and I don't know if other board members did too.
I did too.
Yeah.
Well, I know we have a development in town that I've sold in, a condo development, and they have certain units. They're assigned units, but they're assigned two-bedroom units have tandem so that it's specific to that unit.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that-
it's moot at this point.
Okay. Well, it would,
moves
it
from-
would
That
put
was
them
Joe.
within 3 spaces of their requirement instead of saying.
Tracy, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Now, or maybe this ought to go to Mr. Churlian too. There are parking spaces on Rollins Street.
Mm-hmm.
Those are included in your total count. Those don't require any relief?
They don't require zoning board relief. They will require an alternative parking arrangement from the planning board.
Ah, okay. But is that an existing
It's an existing lot, yes.
Okay, all right, so that's, because I assume it's non-conforming, but it's existing
It
non-conforming.
is an existing non-conforming.
Okay. Other questions from the board?
Can you remind me, there was a single-family home which was in a butter that was going to have some improvement to their landscape last time? What happened there?
Yep. That's a funny story. We are talking about this home right here is 20.5 Washington Street, which looks out at nothing but asphalt.
Right.
And owns none of it, enjoys a 12-foot right-of-way here. The earlier plan would have eliminated that driveway, given them a right-of-way up and through our property. The current plan the current plan now restores this driveway. We just leave the right-of-way. We don't bring a right-of-way in through here, so that's one of the ways that we gain some spaces. So this piece of green space, it's about 25 feet wide by 80 feet long, is asphalt now. That, I would call that a significant improvement for that property. Now there's an interesting posture. Irene Hanslin, who owns that property, will speak. There is a letter that you will read that is from her son, who lives with her but is not an owner of the property, who says this is a terrible project in a number of ways, including that, but he was referring to the previous plan, and he points out that the tandem spaces stink, and we'd just like to keep our driveway. We can make those changes for that concern, but I would say that we actually have restored the driveway and eliminated the tandem spaces.
And added some green space.
And added some green space. And
What's-
Irene, who actually owns the property, I think will say nice things about us.
What's the funny part? So if I've done the
That's
math, and moving on, if I've done the math right, you've reduced the units by about 12%?
Yes.
Very good. Any other questions from the board? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Before I call for public testimony on this, I want to remind you that we have, as you know, heard extensive testimony on the subject of this proposal. This one is a little different, but it's very similar in character. So it would be most helpful to the board if you aimed your comments specifically at the proposal that we have before us tonight. And to the extent that you wish to repeat things that you said before, you could simply cite them as having been said before, but it would be most helpful to us not to hear the same testimony again and again and again. So everyone will have a chance to speak. If what you're saying is not contributing to our understanding of the project, we'll let you know, and we may ask you to stop, but you certainly will have a chance to speak. Now, is there anyone here who wishes to be heard in favor of this appeal? Please come forward. Oh, I got one behind you.
I'll let you first. This is new testimony.
Okay, and we have a sign-in sheet, as has been true up to now. Swear to tell the truth and nothing but it.
I do.
May we have your name, please?
John Roxby. I'll be very brief. My name is John Roxby. I live at 131 North State Street in the Rollins Court Pocket Community. I'm here to support John's newest project. Rollins Court, a set of 8 cottages, was developed by John and completed in 2020. During the pre-construction phases of the project, John took great care in engaging the existing homeowners in the neighborhood, listening to their concerns and soliciting feedback on the project. As a satisfied resident of Rollins Court, I can attest to the fact that John did a great job ensuring that all work, including the homes, common areas, and community gardens, was done to the highest standards and met the individual requirements of each future resident. More than just the buildings, however, John provided the foundation for a new community where all the residents gather together, enjoy shared activities, and watch out for each other. John is committed to his work and is a great asset to Concord. He is committed to improving Concord and providing new and innovative housing solutions for our city, and I strongly support the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard in favor? Please come forward. Swear to tell the truth and nothing but it.
I do.
Have a seat and give us your name, if you would.
My name is Brennan Bork. I live in Pennacook, and I'm speaking today in support of this project because I believe there is a very important need for young folks and any folks in general to have housing. And I actually think that you guys are focusing too much on parking requirement. I think we need lower parking requirement because this property is right in downtown, and it is the perfect spot to be able to walk to your job, to entertainment, to anywhere else. Basically, you have access to the bus, you have access to transit to Manchester or Boston via the bus system, and I think we need to allow development in this section of town to be more, to allow more development and less parking, because cars aren't necessarily people, and and I believe this is the Coalition to End Homelessness, right? Correct?
They're selling the property. The
okay,
developer
so
is not the coalition.
Okay, all right. Well, I still believe that in this prime real estate that there needs to be less parking downtown. Just add as much development as you can in the parking spaces, because truthfully, the way that the generation wants to live and the next generation, they want to live in a way that they don't necessarily have to drive around everywhere, and you shouldn't have to be burdened to own a car if you want to live in the city. And I also believe that. Yeah, yeah, all right, yeah.
Okay. Would you make sure to sign the,
Yes, yeah.
the ledger there?
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Borg.
Yes.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard in favor? I see a person on the left. Please come forward. At least my left. Swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
I do.
May we have your name, please?
My name is Irene Hanslin, and I am the owner of 20 and a half Washington Street. I wanted to add to the recording that I've lived there over 40 years. I've owned the property over 40 years. And I want to reiterate that my last testimony that I'm in favor of the proposition of the proposed development because of the building being historic and we need the housing units. And I'm confident that we'll figure out how about the park, my access and the right of way to my house with the developer. And I understand that my son has written a letter in opposition to the proposal, and I just want to say that he's not an owner of the property at all.
Does he live there?
He lives there,
Any questions?
and I do too.
Thank you, Ms. Hansel. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard in favor? Please come forward. Swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
I do. My name is Millie LaFontaine, and I am not an abutter, but I am a neighbor. I'm also at Rollins Court nearby. I think that, number one, it's wonderful to make use of an existing structure that has historical significance and to turn it into something that is necessary for now. Number two, we need housing. And number three, I think that having more people who actually live in the neighborhood would help people be committed to the neighborhood and to make it a more vibrant place. I think that area right now tends to be just a pass-through. I walk around there all the time, and I miss the neighborhood feel of North State Street, but I think having this on Washington and North Main Street would bring more of a neighborhood feel, which is something that Concord needs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who wishes to be heard in favor? Anyone else? Please come forward. Mr. Lemieux, do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but?
I do.
Would you identify yourself for the record, please?
Thank you. My name is Dick Lemieux. I live with my wife, Barbara, at 7 Washington Street, which is directly across Washington Street from this project. And I just wanted to say that everything I said last month in favor of this project also applies today. So I strongly support the project as it has been reformulated. And I wanted to say also that I agree with the last speaker, Ms. LaFontaine, that this project will bring people, livelihood, and neighbors to our neighborhood as opposed to passers through. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard in favor? Please come forward.
Hi.
Hello. You swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
May we have your name for the record, please?
My name is Mark Fagan, F-A-G-A-N. Last time it was spelled P-A-G-A-N in the last minute, so my fault. I am the Chief Operating Officer of the Concord Coalition, and I've been there for about 2 years and have dealt with a lot of the negotiations and discussions with the various parties who have come forward to look at the property and potentially buy it and use it for other uses. And just my background, I'm a retired finance executive. I've looked at a lot of different transactions and deals and whatnot, and I'm doing this in retirement more than anything else, so I do understand numbers. The offer that John and Ben have made of 30 units, I will tell you, is the lowest number of units that we have seen in terms of all the discussions with people who have come forward to make offers on the property and talk to us about development. The other offers were far in excess of 30 units. Some went as far as 50 units and would have required additional construction at the facility, which would have significantly curtailed or, significantly adjusted the historic nature of the property as well. Not that we are necessarily concerned about the historic nature given our mission, but we did take that into consideration. So we talk about materiality. Going from 34 to 30 units is 12%. It's also very material in terms of the impact on us as an organization in terms of the proceeds we expect to get out of this transaction and using those proceeds for our mission, which we believe is important to the city. And just to clarify the record as well, there were discussions at the last meeting about offers for less than 34 units. There were never any serious offers that came to the coalition for less than 34 units. There was an individual who came to talk to us about buying the property, but that offer was dependent upon using the building based upon existing plans that we had, which would then have more than 34 units. So I found it odd that there was comments made that the property would be used for better purposes less than 34 units. I have looked through John's numbers, and I understand where he's coming from in terms of 30 units being the right, the lowest possible number of units you can get in that, and repurpose that building for housing, which we obviously support given our mission.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard in favor? Please come forward. Swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
I do. My name is Jim Schlosser. I'm a member of the board of the Concord Coalition and Homelessness. I'm a homeowner in Concord and been here 7 years. And just in working with that mission, it's so important that we have more housing. And so to be able to turn this church into this kind of housing, we need housing at all levels, market rate, affordable, supportive housing. So this is really part of our mission, is to help our city address this housing deficiency, which is substantial. And the fact that this is in downtown, walkable, near transportation is just fantastic. So I just request that the board give it serious consideration and approve the requests.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard in favor? Please come forward.
Really just to say that you also have some correspondence, I think, for myself.
We do have a stack of correspondence here. I haven't gone through it all yet, but I will.
My name is Jay Schumacher, and I don't think I can say anything different than this already said, and there's an email attached.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Schumacher. Yeah, here it is. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard in opposition? Please come forward.
Good evening, I'm Brian Shaughnessy from Shaughnessy Raish.
Swear to tell the truth.
I do. I'll sign this afterwards to not detain you. I want to address several legal issues first, just to create a record. If I understand the way the process works, if this is going to be appealed to someplace, the Superior Court would need an adequate record to determine the facts and the facts that are found by this board. A preliminary issue for this.
I didn't, maybe I wasn't listening. So are you here on behalf of yourself or are you
I'm sorry,
representing a client?
I'm here on behalf of the Islamic Center of Concord.
Okay, thank you.
And that brings me to one of the points I wanted to make. Not everybody who may be here or sitting on the board were here for the prior, hearing. And I'll get back to that with respect to the facts and the finding of facts. The threshold issue is this is a new application. And I've heard some discussion about, we've addressed your concerns on parking. We knew there was parking tandem concerns. That wasn't addressed at the last meeting. It was put on hold. The only issue that was decided was the density, and that was voted down. So that is the only issue that you have to make a finding as a threshold issue of whether you have jurisdiction to actually hear this case. You shouldn't be hearing all this other information about all these other variances until you have findings of fact and they have their burden of proof to show it's a material change.
We've already made that finding.
I'm creating my record that I need the facts that would support that finding. You opened the meeting and you said, everybody's read this. Have they proven the material change? There was no testimony of facts. There was nothing presented to you yet other than the written record. You didn't swear the people in. The written records and whatnot is not facts that a Superior Court can actually look at to see if you've made a reasonable decision. The case that's in their written materials is Brandt versus the City of Somersworth. And in that case, the Supreme Court found the material change was in the 15 years intervening between the applications. There was substantial change to the law as it applies to variances. So the seminal case that you really need to pay attention to in terms of the threshold issue is the City of Dover case. You have Fisher versus City of Dover. And in that case, the Supreme Court found specifically that the board committed an error of law when it approved the defendant's second application for a variance without first finding that either a material change of circumstances affecting the merits of the application had occurred, or that the second application was for a use that materially differed in nature and degree from the use previously applied for and denied by the board. With your finding earlier, I have no idea whether you applied the first or the second. It certainly can't be it materially differed in nature and degree from the use previously applied for, because the only issue was the density. And the density reducing by 12% from 34 to 30 is not a material change. It's not a material change of use. And so it has to be the first criteria, material change of circumstances affecting the merits of the application. If you go back to the case they're citing for what does that mean, the material change affecting the merits of the application, they have to, when you have subsequent ones, you have to have a major shift in the doctrine, wrong notes. It has to be a material change of circumstances affecting the merits of the application. Material, merits. And you have no finding and no facts to support your brief. Does everybody agree that it's a material change? So I would object and just creating the record that there are no facts that were submitted. The facts that were submitted when you started listening to the other variances was that we went from 34 to 30 units with no change in the number of bedrooms. Okay, what does that affect? Well, parking. Number of bedrooms definitely affects parking. We talked about economic viability. There was yes, we understand it's not your purview, but a lot of the things you talked about or listened to was the economic viability of this as use as a residential structure. There was no discussion and no information about what other uses. Obviously, the coalition bought it and used it. It would be great if you could get a church to use it. I'm assuming a church could still use it. That's the best use for that property. You heard no information from the applicant of whether other churches could use it. What happened to our faith community? There are other churches that have bought churches and moved in. Isn't that a use that's still economically viable and perfectly suited for the property? A little bit better for parking is what I heard. Well, is that a material change from the last one? And it's not even relevant because we didn't even get to the parking in the last hearing. The only thing we got to was density. So I've created my record. Let me talk about the density. And this goes to whether granting the variance would be consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. You have a board that's already, not a town council, you have selectmen. They've already adopted the ordinance, and they're adopted it under the zoning statute 674-17, which says the purpose of the zoning, and you guys know it, and I'll just read it for the record, to lessen congestion in the streets, to cure safety from fires, panic, and other dangers, to promote health and general welfare, provide adequate light and air, to prevent the overcrowding of the land, and to avoid undue concentration of population. That's the only issue you addressed last time and turned it down. It was the density. It was too much population for this area on the small lot. Now, they have 8 units of right in this acreage, but I don't know why we're not considering the back lot as part of this. If the back lot was in, they would have 14 units as a matter of right under the ordinance. Taking the acreage of that back parking lot and the other parking lot, which they want to keep separate. Why do they want to keep it separate? Because if it's considered as part of this, all those parking spaces are right up against literally the wall of the Islamic Center. That has to be considered with respect to density. You're not having a church that maybe once or twice a week has people parking there. You have people living in a building with their cars parked right up against the wall of a building that is also a place of public accommodation. You have a building that you want to have 30 residences, 44 bedrooms, that is so close to the Islamic Center right next to it. What does that have to say about public safety, about if it's a fire? How are the firefighters going to get into those apartments? That's a big difference if you're using it like the coalition was using it, or if you're using it for a church. You're going to have people in apartments right up against that wall of the Islamic Center. How was a firefighting and getting to that apartment? That is a safety, and that's directly in what the purpose of the zoning ordinance. So the city of Concord has already made a determination regarding density. And in this case, if they want to only consider the lot that they're saying that they're going to be merged, 8 units. And so they proposed 34 and they came down to 30. That's still 22 units more than the city of Concord's public policy has already said is what should be considered in density. And it's consistent with the statute that regulates the zoning. So I can go through all the other issues with respect to traffic and parking and whatnot, but the critical issue, which is the one that was decided before, was the density. The traffic. The traffic is one way in Washington Street. Everybody here knows it. That gets stacked up during the day. And again, going from the church use to having 30 units there, they have to have one way to come into the parking lot, another small coming off of North Main Street to come to those unassigned parking spaces. What happens when people come in there, try to find the parking space that's not assigned? Oh, they're all taken. They're going to have to come back on Main Street. Where are they going to go? Go up this one way, come down around the other way, going to Washington Street? That's a problem. They should be assigned parking spaces, but that's a problem. But that's going to create a traffic in that area almost 24 hours a day, much more than use as a commercial establishment like a building or any other commercial use that could be there. The problem with the traffic is Washington Street backs up all the time. Now you're going to have people moving in and moving out with trucks. You're going to have trash trucks coming in and out onto Washington Street, because that's where they have to do it. You're going to have Amazon trucks. You're going to have FedEx trucks. You're going to have UPS trucks coming there to support 30 units, 44 bedrooms. With respect to parking, and this is not about, John is a terrific developer, and a lot of the comments have been, John's a terrific developer. He's done great things for the city, and we support all of that. And we do need more housing. But we need more housing would be The town of Concord has to decide we need more housing. The town of Concord has to change the zoning ordinance to support more housing. The town of Concord has to do a better job using zoning in order to allow areas where you can have high-rise development. Not your job. So the parking is a problem, the traffic is a problem, the density is a problem, it's a life and safety issue is a problem. I have heard no evidence that there are other uses, that there are no other uses that are allowed in this place other than residential. Everybody's saying we need 30 units to make this residential use viable. Well, what about other uses that are under the statute? That's all part of the hardship analysis as well. So the Islamic Center also has a parking issue in that area, and that's what you're dealing with in this community, how it affects the community. They got a variance before, and they had a sharing arrangement, which is now shot to put. So, but that's what the neighborhood is, and that's the problem we have there. The green space that they're going to develop, the one they're saying over here, that's parking area for the Islamic Center. They have used that since they bought it. The predecessor in title actually created that driveway and that pavement area to be used as a parking area. So they're using it. They're creating green space, but they're taking away more parking that is presently being used by the Islamic Center, which I believe came before the board when they went in there, and it was pointed out, well, we can park here. Well, you're taking that away. So again, parking is going to be a big problem. There's just too many units going in. I can see if you say, all right, 18 units, 16 units. That's more than the 8 or 14 that would be allowed by right, but that's not so far of a deviation, and you can work it. Is anybody considering, the man with the kennels and the dogs and people walking around there? How many people are going to have animals, and how many people are going to be walking around the neighborhood with animals? Where's the animals going to go to the bathroom? Where are they going to? That's going to create a problem with that residential use. So that all goes into the density. It's already been baked into your ordinance, and there hasn't been enough information here to say that they're going to have a hardship because they can't have this as a multifamily residential use. Just haven't met the criteria. It's their burden to meet. Thank you.
What was that City of Dover case you mentioned? Can you just, and I appreciate your talking fast because obviously it's a late night, but can you just very quickly repeat the standard of material change in that City of Dover case?
The standard is when a material change of circumstances affecting the merits of the application has not occurred, or the application is not for a use that material differs in nature and degree from its predecessor, the Board of Adjustment may not lawfully reach the merits of the petition.
Thank you.
I'm trying to follow.
Oh, can I say one last thing? I apologize. I said I'd get back to it, but I didn't. So and I understand you want this to be concise, and you're considering testimony that was done last time, but that's not appropriate in terms of the finding of facts that need to be made, because that's a different application, and that's not going to be part of the minutes of this meeting. And you can't say to people, well, you said it before. If they don't say it here, it's not before you. It's not proper to consider things that you've heard before when this is a new application. Sorry.
Which I think Dr. Tracy already clarified.
I did, as did
And
one of your
said-
members at the last meeting. As long as you incorporate it in as part of your decision-making process on the record, you can include it as testimony.
I want to get a better understanding of the observations made that I think you're trying to say it's the ordinance's job to decide density, not ours. But then you went on to say you'd be okay with 16 units or 18 units?
I could see a 16 units would be a material change to the last application. 16 units would still need a variance, of course, but it's closer to the 8 or 14 than the 30 or 34. That's the issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Please come forward. I've got one way in the back who raised his hand first. I'll get to you.
Opposing, not on favor.
I beg your pardon?
Opposing, not on favor.
Yes, opposing. Would you jot down your name there, please? Do you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Could we have your name for the record, please?
My name is Ahmed Jabir, G-A-B-I-R.
What would you like us to know?
As I said before, I live at 11 Pearl Street. Last time we were here, we talked about 34 units. Tonight we talk about 30 units. My point is, it's not about actually 34, 40. If we have 30, assuming each unit, have like 2 children, I'm focusing on the children area actually. That means we end up with 60 children in that area, which is really stashing them on crowd. I have 5 children myself living in the same area. So eventually they're going to be riding bus with the same children at the street to go to school. Having this number of children, they talk about parking lot, they talk about trash dumpster, nothing mentioned about playground. And that is very essential for child development and child health, mental health. All these kids stashing in these rooms, or in this apartment with this huge number, riding the bus, there will be behavior. The behavior will affect the other kids. I don't want to end up going to River Bend, my kids' counseling, or the rest of my life. We have to be proactive, not reactive, not waiting for the thing to happen to react for it. I think having 14 units, and that part of the building, because I don't see, if I put the picture in front of me, there is no any more space to have a group playground in there. If you can have an indoor playground for the kids where they can spend time playing, swinging, sliding, doing something fun, because their parents definitely working, coming from work, they don't have time to do this and do that. It's going to be a lot of traffic. I don't want those kids to affect my kids when they go to school together and end up in a scenario I don't want to be in. I wish if they can consider having a space, I don't care where, maybe inside the building, just for the kids who are going to be living in that apartment. Because we can't tell people, you can rent the apartment with me if you have only 2 kids. I don't accept more than that. People live in there and they will have more children. And then we will end up having maybe 100 kids there. Can you imagine that building with 100 children there? It is just a scary idea. And how they're going to be impacted by the whole chaos and the programming and the house, and nobody take them out and nobody have the time for that. We're creating something really scary if we look at it the other way. I don't want to say, as I said, I don't want to be proactive. I want to try to think proactive, not reactive, and find a way if we can tackle this issue before it getting out of hand. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Is there someone else who'd like to be heard? I think I saw another hand, yes. Please come forward. Swear to tell the whole truth.
I do.
May we have your name, please?
Yes, Michael Lilly. I'm a resident of Pearl Street. I'm also a small business owner with an office in downtown Concord. So I live, work, walk all over downtown Concord. So I have a vested interest in the viability, everything that goes on in Concord. I support the redevelopment of the property, and I would love to see these guys develop that into a residential complex. What I oppose, and why I'm speaking in opposition to it, is converting that to a 30-unit, highly dense, market rate apartment project. That's what I oppose. I'll speak specifically to the 5 criteria, both in a positive and a negative way, because I want to cover all 5 criteria. So the 5 criteria, criteria 1, the variance will not be contrary to public interest. I'll concede I think that one's met, because what we've all heard and what you continue to hear on variance requests is we need more housing stock. So that one's met. Criteria 2, not granting the variance will result in unnecessary hardship for the applicant. I have a different view on hardship, but you know, in my assessment is that it's not met, and a couple points to that. The current zoning ordinances, they were in place when the Coalition to End Homelessness purchased the property in December 2020. So the zoning laws, zoning ordinances did not come about after the property was owned. It hadn't been owned for 50 years and something changed. That was purchased basically using federal money in a hastily pulled together deal, and it was known that it wasn't going to be a fit for the purpose, but it was an opportunity that presented itself. If we flip to the applicant entered into a purchase agreement for this property with the intention of redeveloping that into a residential unit. They placed contingencies in the purchase agreement, otherwise it wouldn't have been a price reduction, knowing that they had to get variances in order to use it, this property, for its intended purpose, their intended purpose. So that old saying of caveat emptor, the buyer beware, you can't buy property and then subsequently ask for zoning ordinances to be changed or ask for variances for that to be changed because you knew the use for it going in. Thus, I look at this criteria to say, how can that be met? There's no hardship because the rules didn't change. Criteria 3 is that the spirit of the ordinance will be observed. This one is not met. The proposed variance is to increase the number of units from 8 to 30. That's a 275% increase. I can appreciate the reduction, but a 275% increase, how is that within the spirit of the ordinance, which is intended to control density? Right? Criteria 4, substantial justice will be done. Well, what justice is going to be done here? The variance doesn't right or wrong or address a grandfathered issue. It's talking about repurposing a building and actually overriding the current zoning ordinances. Criteria 5, the variance will not diminish the value of the surrounding properties. This one's questionable, possibly met. As a resident in that area, I can say that the current use or the last use of that building as a temporary winter shelter did diminish the value of the property in that neighborhood, and we all hated it. And most of my neighbors who spoke in support of it want to see it, like I do, turned into a reasonable development and not for some other use. In keeping with the law and the facts, my understanding of the statute is that all 5 criteria have to be substantiated and all 5 criteria have to be met. If you don't meet all 5, this board can't grant the variance. That's my understanding. All 5 have not been met. I don't understand how this variance could be granted.
Thank you. Swear to tell the truth.
Will do.
May we have your name for the record, please?
That's all I know how to do.
I would expect no less. Could
Yeah,
I have your name for the record, please?
Ali Sekou. I'm the president of the Islamic Society of Greater Concord. And to be again in front of you guys, it's an honor. And I said it last time, I will repeat it again. We are so fortunate to be in a country that the law matters and the law is applied. And kudos to you guys. We are back again for the same issue that nothing changed, because 12% from 34 to 30, we all know nothing changed. And I am here again to say what I said last time. Uphold the law as you did last time, because when we talk about people, we don't take it lightly. And when we talk about developers that are looking for profits, all the issues that we discussed, none of us here oppose apartment. I'm renting. I'm in an apartment. And I appreciate every developer that come in town. I consider John a friend. We met many times. And I appreciate everything he shared. But the two laws that he shared earlier are very different than the law we are talking about. We are here in an island. Both Washington Street and Pearl Street are one way. So there is no way people can go out in to that lot except coming from up or going from, coming down or going up. So this is a very complex lot. And I think if we want to make sure that this is meet the criteria as previous people just listed based on the law, we have to look at it from 8 to 16 or from 8 to 18 to make sure that not only we are looking to satisfy somebody's need as a developer, but to make sure that we are upholding the law as written. he said 15 is allowed, he want no less than 5. And we are talking about, earlier somebody talked about the parking against the wall of the Islamic Society of Greater Concord. There is not even a 1 inch left for that. And we are talking about safety, we are talking about fire, we are talking about children, we are talking about hardship. All those are in that, because there is no way somebody can exit the door, the building door at the entrance where we have to run away from a fire because it's a one-way street and that door is closed. So I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that door that we have. It's an exit door to the parking lot and it's an exit door to the driveway to Washington Street. And somebody mentioned earlier, since we came here before you guys, when we were looking for the variance for the Islamic Society of Greater Concord, and the only way you guys were able to give us that variance, it's because we were given the right to park where we are parking today. So I think that unless we undo that right that you guys give us, I don't see the green going there, how it will make the lot valuable, or how it will make, the safety of the community or the people that are going to be living there. For me, I'm not looking at Islamic Society of Greater Concord only, but even the people that are going to live there. Somebody talked about the children. 30 units were, you said 8 feet? 800 you said? Or 700 square foot?
Would you address us? And
It was about like 820, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Please come forward.
I'll take this seat.
Swear to tell the truth.
I do.
May we have your name, please?
My name is Faisal Arif. I'm a Concord resident, and I am also an user of the Islamic Society of Greater Concord, the mosque that was permitted by this esteemed board before. So before I actually bring only 2 little points to your attention, I just wanted to recognize all the hard work and appreciate everything that you do here on behalf of everybody who lives in Concord and in the vicinity. Having said so, I just very respectfully want to draw your attention to the distinction between what if and what is. And I think that what I was hearing, being a resident of Concord over here, when our good friend John was presenting the project, was about what if. And that was in stark contrast with what is. To me, the what is what was the use of this particular property, and what if is what is the intended use, and to what degree that would be materially different. To me, it also meant like it is a difference between glass half full, half empty kind of analysis, in the sense that they were focusing on reducing it 12% from 34 to 30, as opposed to what is that it is permissible to use 8 units, and now we're talking about 30, which is, we heard, the 250% more than 12% reduction. And I see at the extent of the variation between the 2 types of analysis, looking at it from 2 perspectives, is significantly different, materially different, at least in my view, when I look at the numbers. Also, what I would like to respectfully bring to your attention is the weather factor here. We live in New England region where winter is harsh, and it also is inflicted with sometimes a lot of snow. And that snow, until the truck comes in and takes that snow away and dumps it into somewhere else, needs to be housed somewhere. And here we're talking about not just the parking space. The what if was, it's the permit, I heard John talking about it, as opposed to the parking space, which is what is, in my view. So those are very practical factors that needs to be considered apart from the legality of things that one of the speakers have identified before. And I think that those are all very relevant factors that this esteemed board is actually tasked with deciding on. That's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Please come forward.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Roy Schweiker, and I'll make this much shorter than last time. First off, I...
Swear to tell the truth.
Yes, sir.
Don't forget to write your name on the little piece of paper there.
I happen to agree with you folks. I think the 12% is a sufficiently different thing to reconsider it. I don't think it's enough to approve it. That's quite different, but it's a change. And once again, they keep throwing in irrelevant facts. They talk about it's eligible for the Register of Historic Places, but I notice they are not trying to get the additional benefit from the city of conforming to the Secretary's requirements for historic renovation. So I don't know how it's going to be. I've read that they're trying to make this a zero energy use property. So I don't know if that means they're going to take off the slate roof and put on solar panels. So we really have no idea what it's going to look like. I do agree. I would be willing to give them the variance for the patios because the patios are going to change the whole historic appearance. I think the secret is all three of those lots that are contiguous be merged, so that business about the dumpster, that really isn't a consideration. That's fine. So yes, there's some of the things that are reasonable. On the other hand, there are some things that are not. I think that they very cleverly said in their thing that they have looked at other housing alternatives for this property, and nobody has produced an offer with fewer units. But when I was here last time, a gentleman said that he had made an offer for this that was refused, and apparently was not a housing offer. So I don't know, once again, if the coalition has decided to reject all, non-housing offers because their business is housing. Like if the Islamic Society offered to purchase this, would they accept it? Or would they say, no, we would rather have it turned into housing, even though certainly anyone who's looked at that map would say that the highest and best use of this would be if the Islamic Society bought it and combined it with their existing property. That would eliminate a whole lot of issues. Okay, so next thing is somebody mentioned amenities, all these kids and stuff. And once again, we're talking about a thing, they're talking about 30 units. I would say a lot of buildings with 30 units do have community rooms, playrooms, whatever. So once again, maybe they've got too many housing units and not enough additional stuff to have these people benefit, because they certainly don't have much of a yard to play in or anything. I think once again, those short spaces, maybe they'd be good for having electrical plug-ins, because electric cars tend to be smaller. You put an electrical plug in there, that's a reason for short cars to park there. It's a reason to tell large cars to go elsewhere. But my last thing on this is, I think that until they can definitively say they have not considered or offers for other than use as housing, that's not a hardship if they aren't willing to sell this for a community hall or a church. And therefore, I would say they should be limited to the number of units that's allowed by the zoning code. I think 8 is the wrong number. I think you should take all the land together and add it up. Maybe that's 14, 15, 16. I know I've been told you can't suggest that to them, but that would be my kind of feeling, is if you come in with a number that's based on the zoning code, based on all of your land, that I'd be more inclined to submit it than one that comes in with double that number. So I think the number of units is still twice as many as it should be. I think that once again, they're not properly considering the impact on the neighborhood of this project. The homeowners seem to mostly like it. It's very hard on the Islamic community that is losing over half of their shared parking. And I think it's very important to make sure there's really enough parking on this lot that at least it's not burdening the streets, and therefore making things worse for the Islamic community that can no longer park on the street either. And once again, in the stuff that you've been sent, I sent you a photo of a vehicle you may well see on your way home tonight if you live north of here, that some guy has this truck that he parks on the street because it's presumably too big for his apartment house. And if they're just having tiny spaces there, some guy with a truck is gonna park it on the street. So I think that, once again, if you're talking huge numbers of units, 30 units, somebody there is gonna have some big vehicles, and instead of just saying we're gonna make some of the spaces smaller, they should be making some spaces bigger, so that people with bigger units are not burdening the street. Because, I've lived in this neighborhood a block away for over 50 years, and the number of cars is more than doubled in that time frame. The people who are telling you that the number of cars is shrinking
I think we
are nuts.
understand that you think traffic is a concern.
Parking is a concern.
Parking is a
I
concern.
did not say traffic.
You're quite correct, I apologize.
Okay, so I told you I'd be shorter, I am, thank you.
All set? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Please come forward. No, we're not doing two bites of the apple, sorry. There is somebody else? Swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
I do, sir.
Would you jot your name down on that piece of paper there, please?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Mohammed Mobeen Thor, and I have been real estate broker in state of New Hampshire since 1997. I was here in the last hearing, and my testimony was, and I repeat again, a bona fide offer was presented to present owners, a cash offer with $50,000 non-refundable deposit, pending upon some due diligence from this board or City of Concord. That offer was some of the combination of some of the investors as well as some of the members of the Islamic Society. That offer would have been totally private investment offer, a taxpayer's, bona fide taxpayer's offer, not a non-profit. Islamic Society was not going to buy it, but some of the members of the Islamic Society as well as some other investors from Manchester area, they were going to buy it, and they were going to use it for combination of commercial as well as residential. The commercial part was the Muslim community, when they need to do their functions, they do not use alcohol for their birthday parties, for their weddings or some other smaller parties. So the purpose of the buying this property at that time was that the front part of the building could be used as a community hall that could benefit to the Islamic Society of Concord, as well as some units, residential units, which would be permitted by City of Concord could be established over there. The only condition was not a financing. There was no condition stating that, hey, we would need a 30 unit or 36 unit or 40 units. It was whatever the town of Concord have allowed, that was the offer. I just wanted to make it clear because recently a testimony was made by the CEO of the coalition that there was no offer made. I am the one who prepared the offer, and I brought that offer to their office. Mr. CEO was there, and one of their other colleague was there. And they sat on that offer for a while, and then for some strange reason, they turned that offer down, saying that we don't want to play these games. I don't know what games he meant. It was a simple offer, put in a writing on a standard real estate form.
I think we have the gist of your point.
Sure. That was, and the other thing is one more thing. Some of our friends over here and folks, they said that we like to see, no parking requirement or very little requirement so that we can. But that's for the town of Concord to decide. Whatever, town of Concord has created a zoning sections, and that's how you guys judge and allow variances, some to yes, some to no. So personally, both the investors, those who want to buy this property, are very capable. Ben Kelly, I have known him for a long, long time. Great guy, very good developer. Jonathan, I heard a lot about him. He has done a lot of good projects over here. But this project, every project is unique and their own requirements. In this particular project, like the president of Islamic Society mentioned, it's sort of an island, you know, very crowded.
I think we've gotten that point too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Any comments from code enforcement?
Nothing additional, no.
I have several pieces of correspondence here, which I will go through and, in some cases, summarize. We have a email from Jennifer and Tom Robson at 23 Ridge Road, who are in favor of the appeal. They believe it will preserve the history and character of the city and provide the use of a building that might otherwise decay. We have an email from Lloyd Setterer, MD, 101 School Street. Who is urging us to approve in order to create more housing. We have a letter from Tyler Samalik Hanslin, who is, I believe we heard Ms. Hanslin, his mother, speak, 20.5 Washington Street. He's concerned about traffic. He's concerned about peaceful neighborhood being sacrificed. He would like to see 20.5 Washington Street's easement honored. He's asking to see parking layouts. This is an email from Jay Schumacher, who does not give an address, but is the CCEH board member and treasurer. That's Concord Coalition to End Homelessness, excuse me. He cites the overwhelming need for housing in the city. Roseanne Haggerty of 101 School Street is also in support of the project for the fact that it will increase housing. Brenda Litchfield, Concord Commercial Real Estate, in support of the housing development appropriate project addressing a critical need. Jim Schlosser, homeowner in Concord at 7 Badger Street. Also in support of the project because it would create housing. Ruth Perencevich, who does not give an address. Also in support of the project because it would create housing. This is Mark Boisvert of 9 Washington Street, is in support of the project. Claude Gentilhomme and Lucy Gentilhomme of, let's see, do they give an address here? 82 North State Street. They are in full support. Urge approval. And this is a picture of a truck that Mr. Schweiker mentioned that parks on the street. And he's concerned about providing adequate parking, as he said during his testimony. Mr. Shorlian,
Very briefly.
would you and your colleagues like to present factual clarification?
I'm going to sit down. Parking in the Pearl Street neighborhood, you know, when there are Islamic Center services is a real issue. I mean, it ties back to, frankly, the fact that there was a shared parking agreement with the church, but by its terms, which was disclosed, presented to this board, it would terminate, not when it's sold to us, when it was sold to the coalition. That right is 3 years gone. There's also reference to that we are taking away parking, those several spaces on the north side. That's on the coalition's property. There's no permission or legal right to use that. The parking study that you requested, you know, 6-8 years ago, that was done, did not include that. It's not there. I don't think you can take away something that someone else doesn't have. I hope there are children here. I wasn't contemplating a swing set. There's a big yard to play on. We have, and in terms of spaces within the building, there are many sort of lounges and co-working spaces. We have not tried to wring every single space out. In fact, the model for this project is that we want people to use these spaces. And lastly, I don't think you're going to find that the sort of history of offers on the property is relevant. If you do think, if I'm wrong in that, you should ask Mark Fagan to talk about what the offer that he did receive is, because I think what you've heard does not represent the full truth about that offer.
Mr.
I
Hart,
have not seen it.
did you want to make any remarks?
I think the only thing I wanted to add was the discussion about other viable uses for the church. And I think you can see, based on the churches that have gone vacant in the city over the years and how they've been reused, apartment conversions are really the only thing that's taken and has been successful to preserve those buildings, as Jonathan's other projects can attest to. The other thing to think about is that even if there were another viable use for the church building, I don't understand how that addresses the concerns that opponents are articulating about the parking demands, about the traffic demands, about the intensity of use on the property. If it were something like a community hall, the public assembly use parking requirement is much higher than what we're talking about here. It's 1 for 40 square feet if you don't have fixed seating. And so that gets you under 2,000 feet of public assembly use that would be permitted based on the 49 parking spaces that can fit on the site. And the parking deficiency is even greater than what we're proposing here, and the volume of traffic going in and out would be even more.
Question?
Yeah, Mr. Arnold, it's not what you just talked about, but I mean, Attorney Shaughnessy was, and I appreciate him being transparent in some of his objections, so we can make a record. Obviously, you have an interest in that as well, right? What do you make of his argument that we should have taken factual evidence before determining the issue of material change? Do you think that that's correct, or do you think that we can proceed making the decision of material change based on the application alone? And then the second question I'll ask related to that is on the issue of whether we can legitimately consider the evidence previously given, which obviously is more time efficient, or is there any merit to his claim that, in your opinion, that we have to hear all the testimony fresh to make a specific record in this case?
So on the first issue on the material change, I think you did accept factual information to make your decision. It was in the form of the written application. The written application set forth our arguments on why there had been a material change in circumstances, and presumably you read that, and presumably that was what your decision was based on. there's an argument that's been made that the only thing that you can look at is the change from 34 units to 30 units, and as we argued in our application, I don't think that's correct. I think this board's decision last month that 34 units was too many was driven in large part by the concern that there was a perceived overburdening on the remainder of the lot. And the bullet points that were set forth in our application identified all the changes that had been made to the overall development to not only reduce the units, but also to reduce the perceived impact and intensity of use on the remainder of the lot. And that includes reconfiguring the parking lot, removing the tandem parking spaces, restoring the 20.5 Washington Street right away so that there's less traffic and risk of interference within the parking lot, and shifting parking spaces from the main parking lot to the secondary parking lot off of Main Street. So I think all of those factors, as recited in the application, go towards whether there was a material change in circumstances, and I don't think it's correct to limit the analysis to just a material change in circumstances. Attorney Shaughnessy rejected outright the concept that there could be a material change in use here, and I think that the material change in use is very similar to the material change in circumstances, in that the use has gone from 34 units to 30 units with other changes on the layout of the property. So I think the application sets it forth. I think that's a summary of it, which was also in the merits of the, in the testimony that was given on the merits of the application, so I think it is part of the record. On your second question about incorporating testimony from the prior hearing, the board at the last hearing made a express comment or an express finding that you intended to do that, and you put everybody who was here on notice of the fact that you didn't want to accept all new testimony, spent several hours at the last hearing receiving testimony, and a number of people submitted comments that just said we incorporate and we have the same commentary that we did last time, and I think that's perfectly appropriate. There's a record, it's in the minutes from the last hearing, and those comments can be easily reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With that, we'll declare the public testimony portion of the hearing closed. In an effort to avoid making enemies of everybody around this table, I will not summarize the entire case. We do have a request to convert the existing First Congregational Church to 30 units of housing. We've heard arguments in favor of doing it, having to do with the peculiarities of the lot and the building, and we've heard arguments in opposition concerning the density and the impact on the neighborhood. And I'm going to start the discussion with Jim. What do you think? How do you look at this one?
Yeah, based upon what was presented tonight and in the written record, I'm predisposed to support. We can go through the various the 5 separate variances, but I did vote in favor of it last time. I think it meets the criteria which we need to consider, and look forward to voting in favor of the 5 requests this evening.
Andrew.
Well, it's the most fundamental aspect of this lot, of course, is the enormous structure on it that it was designed. It is a church, and it's getting a little chippy in terms of what offer was made to who. But like was said, it doesn't really matter. I think what is pretty obvious is that who's ever going to use this, there's going to be a much more intensive use than what the bare bones zoning permits. Whether it stays as another church or religious institution or commercial or apartment building. I mean, unless you happen to find one eccentric, billionaire who just wants to buy it just to live in it, by themselves, it's going to have a pretty intensive use, much more, so unless the only alternative to that would be to tear the building down, which obviously would be preposterous or at least highly undesirable. So given that it's a 26,000 square foot building that, should be put, I think everyone agrees should be put to some positive use. And it's not the greatest area in terms of density, period. I mean, you've got all the 393 traffic is routing through there. It's gonna back up. You've got the gas station, you've got deliveries, you've got all the activity on Main Street. It's gonna be a pretty jammed up area almost regardless. This particular use isn't probably gonna help that much, but I don't see it being, any other use put to that spot being, particularly better on average. Maybe some aspects it would be better, some would be worse, but on average, it's, this is, I think, a reasonable use. I think going from 34 to 30, if they come down a little more, I'd feel, better about it, but realistically, I mean, 850 some square foot per unit is probably pretty, decent size apartment. I mean, so I think it is a hardship to not allow them to put 30 units in there, because otherwise I just don't know what they could really do with it, or when any other use would be that'd be have much different intensity. So I'd be inclined to approve the 30 units.
Brenda.
I'm still struggling with it, though I saw you were doing some math too. It's gonna take them 10 years per unit to try to recover the cost of what they're gonna do with 30 units. So I can see why they were trying to push for more units. I'm just honestly struggling with this one. I really don't. I'm really just hanging on the fence. I completely sympathize with where the Islamic Center is at. I'm absolutely in favor of more housing in Concord. That is my livelihood as it is. And I love that all the neighbors, almost all the individual neighbors are all in favor and in support of it. So it just leaves, I'm just really torn. It's gonna probably be a last minute decision, but I'm still struggling with 30 units, but fiscally I can see why it'd be very difficult to do less.
Mr. Wallner.
Well, the two major issues that we struggled with last time was parking and density, and both of those have been addressed, maybe not ideally to everyone's satisfaction, but I think it's a reasonable compromise in terms of those two issues.
I am persuaded that this is a reasonable use under the circumstances. There's no question in my mind, and I think I said this at the last month's meeting, that the site, configuration of the site and the building create a hardship for anybody who tries to reuse this building. It's, as Mr. Winters put it quite clearly, no matter what happens here, it's going to require forgiveness. The ordinance was not designed to deal with this. As far as the question about whether or not we found fact correctly when we found this to be materially different, I have full confidence in that we did. There was no doubt about it. All of the information is in the application. I don't think that information somehow becomes invisible because it wasn't spoken out loud at the hearing. So I would be inclined to support a motion to approve. I think all of the other variances, 2 through 5 in 0077-2023, all stem from the same cause, which is the configuration of the lot and the peculiar nature of the building and the lot. And the solutions are all reasonable solutions. And as for the concerns that we have heard from the Islamic Center, I do not by any means discount them. However, these two buildings are both unusual buildings. They're not residential buildings right now. They're peculiar buildings, and they're going to have to be neighbors no matter what. And I think that I can say with confidence that this development is not creating a a liability for the Islamic Center, notwithstanding their reservations about it. I think we should probably, since we have 2 cases and 5 issues here, I'm wondering if it might not make sense, given our history with this case, if we dealt with number 1 under 77/2023 by itself, because we did address that by itself before, because it's the main, I think it is the main issue of concern. Does the board agree with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Would anyone care to make a motion?
Let's get my bearings here.
James, you're getting ready to make the motion, is that why you're shuffling through?
I'm just looking for my agenda so I can match up with what we're talking about.
And I think we should be thorough, because obviously there's,
Yeah,
And use mine.
this may not be the end of the road for this particular discussion.
So we're looking at
Number 1.
just number 1.
Just
on,
number 1, that's the
application
density.
77, okay. I'd move to approve variance number 1 in application 77. I can lay out the criteria. Should I lay out the criteria now, or okay? I'm going to start with which I think is the probably the most important one, or at least the one that is the most likely to be controversial, which is unnecessary hardship. And just to summarize what we've touched on, the building itself creates a clear hardship as to the literal number of units. So it really comes down to a bit of a judgment call as to what sort of an appropriate number of units or use to allow, be it commercial, nonprofit, or residential. We're kind of neutral on what, but since we brought residential, and I think that 30 units, given that the 26,000 square feet is reasonable, it also really does bring them very close to the parking, which we're going to get to later. So I think it would be a hardship for them to have literal enforcement, and whether it's 15 or 18 units. I don't think 30 in this case is an unreasonable amount given the size of the building. As far as will not be contrary to the public interest, there we can really look at the need for housing. In its current use, this is obviously much more desirable for the neighbors than the current use, but in terms of the public interest, we think adding that kind of housing stock will be in the benefit of the public, although there's probably going to be some additional traffic and parking concerns. I don't think they'll be so overwhelming to outweigh that. I think the spirit of the ordinance is observed because it is pretty close to downtown and a fairly, relative to Concord, a pretty densely housed area, so it wouldn't be completely out of line with a close to downtown area. I think substantial justice will be done for those same reasons, and I don't think there's been any serious testimony that the surrounding property's value will be diminished. If anything, it could very well be improved by having a more vibrant residential area nearby.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. 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 All opposed?
Nay.
The vote is 4-1, with Ms. Perkins in the minority. The variance is granted. And that moves us down to 2 through 5, which all have to do with the table of dimensional regulations on off-street parking requirements. I think in the arrangement of the refuse containers, these are all created by the dimensional situation there, the configuration of the lot and its size. Does the board concur that we can cover those in one motion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Would anyone care to make such a motion?
I would move to approve variances 2 through 5, and without repeating everything I just said, or really anything I just said, I think in summary, they all follow from the additional units and the configuration of the lot and the building itself, that the developer has demonstrated a plan that really attempts to maximize parking and other design, as best they possibly can under this number of units which we just approved.
Is there a second?
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous. And that brings us down to case 0078, 2023, 1420 Washington Street. This is a companion to the case that we just acted on and has to do with continuing the non-conforming use of the parking lot, which is integral to the proposal that we've been,
It's the piece that's across the street, right? Oh.
it's the other lot that's next door. In other words, it's
The lot.
it's
The one-
the parking lot.
Oh, okay.
Big lot.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's the big lot, gotcha.
Yeah. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I'd move to approve. I mean, on this one, you know, Mr. Torlane basically thinks that the ordinance is wrong, but it's a, you know, but which we can't agree with that. But in this particular context, it lets them get in more spaces, which is really imperative. And I think it's you know, his argument, which I think has merit, is that because it's a neighborly setting and it's understood people living in this kind of area are gonna need to have more densely packed parking than normal. That's part of what they sign up for when you get into a building like this, so that they will be sort of neighborly about sharing the smaller spots.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. On the discussion end of this, I think the configuration of the parking that he's proposed is actually, from the point of view of the impact on the neighborhood, superior to what would be necessary, what would result if they tried to actually conform to the requirements of the ordinance. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous. The variance is granted. That concludes our agenda this evening. Do I hear a motion to approve last month's minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I hear a motion to approve the drafts of
So moved.
the report from code enforcement? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anything else?
Yeah, let's talk about next month.
Need to do it on the record or off the record?
We should do it on the record.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So we have 13 cases pending for next month, and we haven't hit the deadline yet. I know a number of you aren't gonna be available for the regular meeting night next month, so we need to talk about what our plan of action is for these cases.
I'm definitely not going to be here. Chris may not be here.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be here either.
So they have to be heard if they get their application within time, correct? That by right, unless they request a continuance,
They
correct?
have to be heard at the next available meeting. The statute's really, it's not like
Gives
it
us
has to be the next meeting, it's the next available meeting.
You can't have a
So-
meeting if you can't get 3 members.
Right.
And Ted
Exactly.
Evans may not be
There
here,
is
so
a, I mean, you can't indefinitely put something off. There is a time frame that we have to hear by, but we're not at risk if we have to put it off a week or two of exceeding that limitation.
Well, as I say, I don't think I'm going to be here, and Nick's not going to be here, so we should, I guess, question number 1 is, can you get a board together for the,
So I checked, I can be here, I can definitely be here the first Wednesday of next month.
So the most we would
And I
have
can be
Jim.
here.
in Jim, and then if we have Laura, we have 4 members. So
second-
we're not gonna have a 5-member board.
Wait, Ted, you said Ted's not available?
Ted is no longer available right now.
And just to add, I don't know what's gonna be on the agenda, but I'm aware something's coming where I'm gonna have a conflict.
Okay,
There's that issue too, yeah.
yeah. So I would suggest maybe we do the 13th as the first night, and then, if we need a second, we can go from there.
Are you guys available on the 13th?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can make
I don't know if I
myself
can do it to say, we will go to 9 o'clock on the 13th and warn the applicants that they could get pushed to October.
Right, we might draw out some continuances.
or do we want to just schedule 2
Split
right
the
up front?
We can
agenda.
schedule 2 right up front. I have the council's chambers calendar up now.
So not the 6th, we'll just take that out.
Right. So if we did the 13th, Tuesdays are usually open. We could do the 13th and the 19th. Do we have a quorum on the 19th?
Tuesday, you mean a Wednesday.
No, I meant a Tuesday, because the Wednesdays for the rest of the month are taken in this room.
The 19th, I might be I can be there, but it's possible I would be like 15 minutes late.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
But I can try to
Okay.
work around that. If we're starting at 6, but
What about a Thursday? Are Thursdays better?
Tuesdays and Thursdays are bad for me, until a little bit later on.
Well,
So the
with all
third-
due respect, Mondays, Wednesdays are booked, and I'm not gonna be here on a Friday.
Is the third, so are we
I
still talking
stand-
about
As
the
a matter of principle?
13th?
As a matter of
How about a
principle, I'm not
Saturday?
doing this on a
Yeah,
Friday night.
Saturdays and Sundays are great.
let's meet Christmas Eve.
Is the 13th still the first date you're looking at?
Yes.
Okay, so that one I
So-
can definitely do.
So we're talking about ZBA on the 13th,
Yep,
not on the 6th,
not on the 6th.
and ZBA on the 20th?
And that's a Tuesday, right?
The 20th is
No, the
planning
20th is
board.
a
We
Wednesday.
can't-
Oh, the 20th is
bump
booked.
Planning board, yep.
How about
Wait,
the 27th?
Nick, are you saying the 19th
So I
is?
can do the
you could do
21st
later
better
in
than
the
I can do
evening?
the 19th.
Yeah, I can do like 7 o'clock.
You want to do the 19th at 7? Because Nick could do 7.
We can do
Oh, I
that.
could make 7
And
work.
same thing with the Tuesday. It's got,
Okay.
on
So
my
the
Tuesdays, on my
19th at
Tuesdays.
7, does
I
that
could
work
do the
for people?
19th.
Okay,
So all my Tuesdays and Thursdays.
so we'll do the 19th at 7, and I'll try
that's
to even out the agendas and get it so that it's even.
Yeah, do
Okay,
your
and-
best.
I will.
The 19th, it might be the one time I don't show up if you don't need me. But if you
Fair
do
enough.
need me, I can be there since it's at 7.
I would need you.
So,
Okay.
so it'll be the 13th at 6 and the 19th at 7.
Because if anybody has a conflict, I don't
What
have a
day's the
conflict.
13th? Is
Okay.
that a Tuesday?
That's a Wednesday.
The 13th is a Wednesday, that's a regular second night, and the 19th is the following Tuesday.
How are we doing for alternates?
So there's one alternate that's being considered by the city manager's office right now. I haven't had any other applicants other than that one, we're just waiting for that one to get through the process.
Or you would object to more?
I would never object to more alternates.
Can we have more than one alternate?
You can.
Do you
As many as
want
you want, right?
No.
lawyers, or is that, because I mean, I know a lot of
Slows it
lawyers,
down.
but I
I'm
don't know if
getting-
you want, right?
We look for diversity, but, you
Right.
know, breathing.
Yeah.
I'm getting,
We're on the record.
I'm getting feedback from home,
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
the
Uh-oh.
27th,
27th,
yes, as opposed to the 19th.
we can do that.
Wait, the 27th is better for you?
Yes.
That's a Wednesday again. And it's the last Wednesday of the month, so there's nothing scheduled in this room yet.
Shall we do that?
Instead of the 19th?
I can do the 27th.
Yep.
That works.
Okay,
Would that be at 6?
yep.
Yep.
And then
booking
what's
it
the
right
date of the
now.
October meeting?
Maybe send us an email to remind us.
Yeah, please
Of
do that.
course.
Just because I'm gonna forget by the time I
I
get
hate to
home.
say it, we should bring our wives for this part. So I'm like,
I'm sorry, the 20th is now not happening, or the 19th is now not happening.
I can't keep up with this right now.
they're saying that the 13th and the 27th.
Yes.
And skip the
Six.
19th.
And we'll do 6 o'clock on the 27th?
Yes,
Yes.
please. Oops, not AM though.
Okay, so not the 19th, that goes away.
So it's both Wednesdays, right?
They're both Wednesdays. It's Wednesday, a
6
Wednesday off,
PM.
and then the other Wednesday.
I'm good at 6.
And the 13th,
Yes, please.
and not the 6th.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want this paper for recycling?
I can take it for recycling, and we can adjourn now, and
So motion to adjourn?
So moved.
This guy's trying to go home.
Aye.
Aye.